Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Team Never Quit podcast. As always, thank you guys for listening and watching, and please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button wherever you're getting this show. So today, before we get to our special guest, let's kick it off with our weekly Patreon question. And this week, we've got, if you were to get a super sick free Airbnb anywhere in the world for a week, where are you going?
Sardinia. Hands down.
I liked Corfu. I think Corfu would be a good spot.
No. I liked Corfu too, but I'm sticking with Sardinia. If I'm going to have a badass Airbnb right on the beach for a week, I want to be in Sardinia. That's my spot. No takebacks.
Corfu, where's yours?
I like Corfu.
Man, I don't know. I was liking Corfu a whole lot there. Now you're saying Sardinia. I don't know. I spent a little time in, God dang, what's the one off the west coast of Italy there?
Sicily?
No, further north.
Corsica.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Man, drawing blanks here. No, I spent some time in Corsica and fell in love with the place. It's
We haven't been there yet.
And quiet and beautiful.
In French. Corsica's French on the...
They're pretty clear about that they're not French.
Really?
Yeah.
But they're owned by France.
Yeah, but
culturally, I don't think so.
Really?
Yeah, I got a good story about a debt we did in Corsica. We should talk about that sometime.
I'd have to say Sardinia too. Like, I want to be the ambassador to Italy. I belong there in a former life. If it wasn't for Texas, man, and being born here and the way this place is, but I love it over there.
We definitely love Italy. We've traveled all over and we keep going back. Even if we're going to go, like
We stopped there.
We stop in Italy. Like last summer our intention was Greece, and we went to Greece and we loved it, but we stopped in Italy too because we freaking love it. We love all of it.
We had a great time in Greece.
Mm-hmm. And we don't even drink wine. So we're not there for the wine or anything, which I think is crazy that you don't drink wine at dinner. But
yeah, they do give us the look.
Yeah, they give us a mean look. But we just love the culture, the natural beauty,
food,
the architecture, the
3-hour
history.
dinners.
Yeah,
I like 3-hour dinners.
The naps throughout the day. Like if you're not in a touristy area and you try to go eat at 12 o'clock, they're like, "Oh, we're on a nap. Come back later."
Somebody's doing it right.
That's why they live so long there.
Yeah.
Because it's like island life.
Yeah.
You know, it's just chill.
We talked about this before. I mean, we put all this stress on ourselves. We do all this to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an American thing.
Yeah, we got to learn how to chill.
Yeah. Hawaii. Hey, that's a great place too.
Yeah, Hawaii. I would do Hawaii.
Hawaii, yeah. Sure, that was a good question.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Thanks for doing this, man. Welcome to the Team Never Quit podcast. We got a file on you and everything. I love your story. And being military and aviator, man, I know a lot of people are going to want to hear it. So before we get things started, man, tell me where you were from. Where were you born?
Yeah, I was born in Princeton, New Jersey. Moved to Manlius, New York when I was 5 years old. My dad took a job with General Electric. He was an engineer there. I went to school there until between my junior and senior year. We moved to Vestal, New York. Terrible time for a kid. I've been in the same school system my whole life, but we moved to Vestal, New York, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was kind of nice to go to a new school. Nobody knew me. I was mysterious. I played lacrosse too. So I came from a school, one of the top lacrosse schools in the state of New York. And then I went to Vestal, and they all thought I was going to take their starting spot, which made me kind of cool. Turns out it wasn't that good, but it's a spring sport. So I made it through most of the school year with a lot of credit I hadn't earned.
Oh my gosh.
No, that was great. And then I went off to Penn State after that, electrical engineering.
You said your dad was an engineer, right?
My dad's an engineer.
What about mom? What'd she do?
Mom was a homemaker.
Check.
The most undervalued and important job in our society.
Period. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We had it great.
It's actually a full-time job. I don't understand why it gets overlooked like it does.
Full-time with overtime.
Yeah, check.
Well, I'll tell you what, our house was always beautiful. She planned our meals for the week. I made sure that we were getting proper balanced nutrition based on the 4-4-3-2, which She didn't know any better. But yeah, no, we just had a great life. You know, we were loved and we felt safe, and it was a good place.
You got any siblings?
Yeah, I got a younger brother.
What's he do?
He's a software engineer.
Another engineer.
Yeah, his path was very different than mine. He kind of went out and just made himself. Didn't finish school. Just went and got interested in stuff and taught himself and worked his way up. He's a very successful guy.
Very cool.
So you got any military in your family?
Yeah, my dad was United States Navy during the Korean War. He served on a seagoing tug down in the Caribbean. He was electronic tech. He's got some pretty interesting stories from those days. And he's got his anchor on his anchor tattoo
nice.
And all that stuff.
True
old school.
Popeye.
Oh, yeah. I mean, same tattoo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were always fascinated with that thing. But yeah, that was my dad. And then he went, got out of the Navy, went to Rutgers, got a degree in electrical engineering, then like a master's in like solid state physics.
My gosh.
He was a researcher at RCA. His name's actually on some of the patents around the manufacturing process for the complementary CMOS, complementary metal oxide semiconductor, which is a type of transistor that every device in this room that's electronic has in it. So,
wow.
yeah, big throbbing head kind of guy.
Right?
Yeah, you can see it.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So what got you spun up about the military? And why jets?
Yeah, so this is a weird path. So, you know, my dad was he was a private pilot. Never flew with him. He just went on the weekend and flew. He had a little flying club he was in. He flew around, but I always loved airplanes. Went to a lot of air shows as a kid, and I was just in love with it. I built model airplanes, model rockets, all that stuff. I loved space exploration. The Apollo program ended, when I was a little kid, and I remembered all that stuff. And I watched a lot of I Dream of Jeannie. Major Nelson was my
great
man.
show.
It is a great show.
Great show.
Mm-hmm.
Great show.
Mm-hmm.
Great show.
I was on the carpet too, watching that. The
Yeah.
Gilligan's Island, the I Dream of Jeannie, that whole little trifecta of shows there in the morning.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember that, bro.
Uh-huh.
And he's Air Force astronaut, right?
Yep, Air Force astronaut. And Major Nelson
I Dream
was...
of
yeah.
Jeannie guy?
Yeah, Major Nelson.
Yeah.
He was an astronaut.
Major Nelson was an
And
astronaut.
Dr. Bellows, right?
Dr. Bellows was the psychiatrist, and Major Healy was
Major
his
Healy,
little
that's
sidekick.
right.
He was the goofball
Good pull,
sidekick.
man.
I thought he was
Yeah.
a salesman.
Yeah, no. That's Bewitched.
Oh, I'm thinking of
that's
Bewitched.
that's
Okay.
Darren and
Completely different
Sorry.
realm.
Okay.
Genie, witches.
those are after school shows.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Bewitched. Yeah.
No, but I was in love with that, and I had telescopes, and I was really into space, and I used to sleep out in lawn chairs to look at the stars and stuff. I loved the moon, and I just always wanted to be an astronaut. As a matter of fact, I had a spacesuit Halloween costume when I was a
how
little
cute.
kid. I used to wear it to bed. I had a helmet and everything, it was shiny silver thing. I just always wanted to be an astronaut, but that got interrupted a little bit. So I went to Penn State for electrical engineering. Wasn't really focused on the military or being an astronaut or anything like that. It was time to go to school, and that's what everybody did. And I didn't really have a clear vision for why I was going there. It was just the thing that I was supposed to do at that point in my life. So I went, and on paper I was an electrical engineer, but in reality I majored in social life and did quite well at that. But a couple fall semesters, and I found myself back home, figured out what I was going to do with myself. So I realized I needed a little direction. So I went down to the recruiter's office and enlisted in the Air Force.
Anything gets you sparked on that? Why the Air Force? Was it a movie?
Major
or something?
Nelson.
That was the one?
Major Nelson.
Right on. Okay.
I joined the United States Air Force because I watched I Dream of Jeannie as a kid. Yeah, that's what happened.
All right.
That was it. So yeah, I went off, went through basic at Lackland, 1987. Man, was it hot. I ended up going to electronic warfare technician school in Biloxi, Mississippi. I was back before the casinos and all that stuff. So a couple of short-haired fellows walking around in town had better be checking their six the whole time. And it was pretty rough back then. But I picked that school because it was the longest school. It was a year-long A school. And I figured I just flunked out of college. I better try to get some education somewhere. So I picked that one because it was long. Seriously, that's how
so
an
funny.
18, 19-year-old kid thinks, right? It was a good choice. No, so I went there. did just fine there. Wanted to go overseas. So at that time, we had a lot of bases in Europe. So they give you your dream sheet, and I went there and put Ramstein. And then I went and got a map, and I just spiraled out from there. I listed every base in Western Europe. And all the Air Force saw was overseas volunteer, and they sent me to Suwon Air Base in Korea.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, 1988, 87, 88. Korea was very different than it is now. They had just started driving, like private ownership of, family having a car. That was a fairly new thing there. There's still a lot of dirt roads, a lot of political unrest. I saw some Molotov cocktails and tear gas up in Seoul. The Olympics came through. It was an exciting time. A lot of mop gear and, anyway, so we worked A-10s there. And the nice thing about that crappy short tour in Korea is that you get to pick your next assignment in the Air Force. So I looked at the map and said, Hurlburt Field, man, Florida sounds cool. So went to Hurlburt Field. That was the first special operations wing back then. That was before, all the growing up we did.
What year is this?
So it was 89 through 91.
Oh, wow.
So we went and, Operation Just Cause happened.
I was about to say the storm's going.
Yeah, Just Cause and WW Storm. Did all that stuff. It was crazy. I was working midnight to 7 a.m. and working on airplanes. And I went to Okaloosa Walton Community College during the day. So I knocked out all my prereqs and transferred to the University of Florida as a junior, and finally got serious about my engineering education. So I was very lucky when I got there. I didn't have any money. I was as broke as could be. I had the Montgomery GI Bill, but I needed a job. So because I had a SCI and some electronics expertise, there was a research lab there that was funded by the Army. We were doing some early neural net processing. We were trying to teach a longbow fire control radar how to recognize targets. Pretty edgy stuff, very satisfying work. I did extremely well in school. But that lab life was a stark contrast to what I did on the weekend, because I was jumping out of airplanes all the time. So got a couple hundred jumps under my belt and started doing free fall photography and all that stuff. So I had this action-packed weekend every week, and I had the not so action-packed time in the lab.
That's both ends of it, all right.
What's that?
That's both ends of it.
It's both ends of it. Yeah, it absolutely is. And, the work at the lab was very satisfying intellectually. It was really cool stuff. I still love it. I'd like to see where they are with it now. But I'll tell you, there was a guy in there that had they had brought in a special chair for him, and he had some kind of wrist brace because he had carpal tunnel syndrome. And I remember looking at that guy and going, these are not my people. And that day, I remember very clearly, I shoved my chair back and I said, I'm 25 years old or 24, whatever I was. I said, I can do anything I want. What's the coolest damn thing I can think of? And I went right back to my childhood and I said, I want to be an astronaut. So the internet was pretty new then, had bulletin board services and stuff like that. But I did some digging around, talked to some folks, called some recruiters, stuff like that. And I figured out that the way to get to NASA was to go to Navy test pilot school. So I said, all right, I'm an engineer. I can do this, man. Called up the Navy, said, hey, I want to fly them F-14s. And they said, hold on a minute, fella. Like, there's a couple things you got to do first. But that's the great thing about being a young guy. You don't know you can fail.
So had you already completed 4 years in the Air Force?
Yeah, so I did my 4 years in the Air Force, went and kind of pieced together my bachelor's degree at University of Florida. And I started my graduate studies. I was actually pushing towards a PhD. I thought I was going to be a college professor, but no. You know how that happened. So
then you go into the Navy. Do you have to go into boot camp again?
I had to go through OCS.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, let me tell you something. Navy OCS is one hell of a lot harder than Air Force boot camp. My God.
That's why I tell everybody to join the Air Force.
Well,
I'm the best recruiter there is for the Air Force, and I don't even know why, man. It's
because it's easy.
I mean, I know why. There's some absolute things, but yeah, for sure.
Well, we're going to talk about what happened in the Navy. So that, and by the way, no way do I regret my service. I love that I did. I do it all over again. Some bad stuff happened though. My oldest son, who's getting ready to graduate from college next year, he wants to go fly. So yeah, he can be a light blue guy. That's cool. We can do that. Air Force has a little bit better. But yeah, I went to OCS in Pensacola. Went to flight training. Did well enough to get F-14s, and they sent me up to Oceana for my F-14 training. So I got winged down in Pensacola, went up to Oceana, about a year of F-14 training, and straight to Fighter Squadron 14 top hatters. And my timing was awesome because I skidded to a stop, and 2 weeks later we were in Kosovo. So, you want to train a young fella up, just throw him in there. So, they had advanced integrated air defense systems, fourth generation Soviet stuff. If you recall, F-117 got shot down while we were there. And it was some pretty sporty stuff. If we were over the wire, they had those optical launched SA-6s. So we have radar warning receivers in the jet, right? So if somebody paints you with a radar, weapons control radar, you get a tone and a little symbol. It kind of tells you what direction it's coming from and all that stuff. Well, they can defeat that if they launch them optically. So what they were doing was they had some kind of sighting system, and they would put the missile out in front of you, and they would turn the radar on at the last second to try to affect terminal guidance. So it was pretty, it was a pretty nasty threat. And so we were hauling ass, and we were doing 500, 550 knots all the time, pulling G's constantly. If I wanted to go from here to there, I did it like this.
So you had a Tomcat?
F-14.
Those things hauled ass, right?
Yeah, they're fast.
Had a big motor?
Big engines.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, big engines. You can stand that thing on its tail and accelerate straight up. It's a
Top Gun made those things sexy as hell.
They did.
For sure.
Well, no. They made Top Gun sexy as hell.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I said that wrong. That is absolutely the way that's supposed to be said. That is a great SR-71. I think, man, those two jets are badass, man. Yeah,
that's the speeds insane. I'll tell you a story though. Who was I with? Cheese Lindbergh, another guy in we were VF 101 later tour, but we took a jet out for a post maintenance check flight, and we got our checklist done in about 15 minutes. Well, you got two lieutenants with, 15,000 pounds of gas and an hour to kill it at F-14. What are you going to do? So let's put it on the roof. So we were out in Whiskey 72, east of Oceana. We went up there, 50,000 feet. That's the service ceiling, because if you blow a canopy seal or something like that, you're just going to boil your blood and die instantly.
My gosh.
Airplane probably could go a little higher than that, but there's not a lot of air. So, you're in full afterburner and your airspeed indicator is, saying 150 knots or something like that. But, over the ground, you're doing 600-700 knots. So we went up there, and I'll tell you what, any flat earthers are listening to this, the earth is round. It's definitely round. You get up there and the sky gets dark, and you can see the curvature of the earth. And man, it is the most beautiful thing.
It turns blue, right?
It's dark. Yeah, it's cool when you're way up there. And, you can see a whole continent almost. It's crazy.
Wow.
It's just a spectacular view.
How long could you sustain that?
Until you ran out of gas. You're not burning a lot of gas. And there's no air. So, a constant fuel air ratio. If there's no air, there's not a lot of fuel.
How far up are you?
50,000 feet.
Shit.
Yeah. Get near the edge of space. But we're talking about a fast airplane. So what do you do when you're at 50,000 feet? Well, now you come downhill, right? So G's bunts the nose a little bit, and, you hold about 0.2 G's, just enough to keep the oil in the bottom of the sump, but not a lot of load on the airplane. And you just accelerate man, it is crazy. And you watch that airspeed indicator go up, and, we go through the number, and I saw 1.6, 1.7, 1.8 Mach. It is unbelievable. And I looked down at our ground speed indicator. We were doing over 1,500 knots. Nautical miles per 1,500. So what would that be? It's like 1,700 miles per hour, 1,800, something like that.
Gosh.
It was insane how fast we're going. So we go back to Oceana, and we land, and we're taxiing into line. All the plane captains and the maintenance guys are out there and stuff. And as we're pulling into the chocks, they're all pointing and going, hey. They're looking at the airplane. We're like, what? We hop out. The airplane had a fresh coat of paint on it when we went flying. It was not so fresh when we got back. We ripped all the paint off the radome. Any leading edge on the aircraft was just naked metal at that
Oh
point.
my gosh.
It was one of the coolest things. The paint on the radome was peeled back like a banana. It was crazy.
Oh my gosh. That's
crazy.
nuts.
Yeah, you're not going to do that in a Hornet. I promise you that.
That's crazy.
That's a good story, man.
Is that the fastest plane?
Sorry, 71's faster, but
Okay.
F-15 guys. Yeah, B1's pretty fast too. We
Is that
tried to
what
jump
has
we tried to jump a B1 one time. We were out in the area way up high. We saw him zorch along at sea level, and we're like, "Hey, let's go get him!" And we went downhill, couldn't catch him, which surprised me.
Wow.
Same engines. They got 4 of them though.
I saw a 71 the other day. We were at Lackland for a boot camp graduation, and they had one parked up. So you can take a look at it, man. It's still one of the sexiest looking things.
Cool. Yeah. Cool airplanes.
Is that what's a Blue Angel?
Those are F-18s.
F-18.
They're flying
Okay.
Super Hornets now. E's. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is an F-14 smaller? Sorry, I don't know all that.
No, it's big.
It's
We call it the
big.
big fighter.
Okay.
The if you're looking at it plan form, the area is about the size of a tennis court.
Oh,
So they call
wow.
it the big tennis
Oh
court.
my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy. The horizontal stabilizers are the same size as the wings on an A4, which is a light attack aircraft in Vietnam. It's a big airplane.
Dang.
There's got a huge motor, right?
Huge engines. Yeah. Huge
That's
engines.
crazy.
And we got a new one coming online now, right? Not the 35s. Is there a 42?
35s are out. Yeah, and I've just been seeing some stuff. I'm kind of getting away from that now, but yeah, our 6th generation fighters.
So we're talking to some of the
for sure.
16 guys the other day at Lackland. He was saying something about a 40 coming out or a 42
Yeah.
or something.
Yep.
The 35 can flip. It just flips in the air.
They do some pretty crazy stuff. Digital flight controls have come a long way. And that's a thing with the F-14. So here's a story. I'll tell you a story about our buddy Jake Elsey.
Congressman Elsie, please lay one on me. I got a bunch myself. Great dude. Huge Jake Elsie fan.
Brother of another mother. Love the guy. So me and Jake, it's during workups, we're out, vacapes somewhere in the Atlantic. And Jake and I, it's a day hop. There was a go before us. All the other aircraft are holding overhead, getting ready to recover after our launch is complete. So we're sitting on Catapult 1. When you get in there, there's a shuttle. So the way the catapult works is it's a big steam piston and it's got a shuttle on it. You've probably seen that thing running up and down the deck in the movies and stuff like that. But they bring that thing all the way back. You taxi the nose gear up to it. You drop a launch bar in there and it hooks into the shuttle. And then there's something called a holdback fitting. So they put that hooks into the back of the nose strut and then into a fitting on the deck, so that when they apply steam pressure, you're in tension. So it's pulling the airplane forward, but until that holdback fitting lets go, it's restraining you. So there's a lot of force on that thing, as you can imagine. You've got to accelerate a 74,000 pound aircraft to 160 miles in a couple hundred feet. So anyway, we're in tension. Jake runs the engines up to military power, which is the highest power setting out of afterburner. We do our control wipeout, make sure all the control surfaces are going. You got final checkers out there giving thumbs up, all that stuff. The shooter gives us a sign for afterburner, because in the F-14A, you need to be an afterburner taken off on the ship. So Jake lights up the blowers. We see the shooter look around at all the crew. Everyone's giving him a thumbs up, so he touches the deck. Now, when the catapult officer, that's the shooter, when he touches the deck, that's a signal for probably some 19-year-old kid over in the catwalk to push a button.
Absolutely, a 19-year-old does that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We put a lot of trust.
A lot of trust in them
fellas.
19-year-olds, man. They drive the boats and do all that stuff too.
Oh, yeah. We grow them up quick.
Grow
don't
them
we?
quick.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing. But he signals to drop the holdback fitting, and, so we launch. And, as I look over to him on my left, I just start seeing bright orange all over the place. And I twist around in my seat and the whole back of the airplane's on fire. Holy shit. And and Jake goes, "We're going to go." We were both thinking the same thing. If we go down the cat stroke, we got to eject, because we were just in a ball of fire. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to share my secret fear that I always had on the aircraft carrier. You go off the front end,
And
you eject, you survive, and then you get run over
then
by
the boat
ship.
runs over.
Yeah.
Hey, that scares me. I'm not even a damn pilot, man. That's a terrifying thought.
Yeah, I was pretty terrified of that. But so we're on fire like crazy. But I'll tell you, those firefighters, man, they were quick. I mean, they just had us covered in foam in seconds.
Oh my God.
It was amazing how quick they had us covered in foam. So now you're always taught, once you're in tension with your throttles up, you do not throttle back until they walk out from underneath the jet and show you the holdback fitting. That's the way you know you're not in tension. Because if you throttle back and then the catapult goes,
Oh yeah.
now you're just going swimming, right? So we can't see.
That's terrifying.
So we're in full afterburner, just going like this. We know we're on fire, and then there's foam. The boss is screaming, throttle back, throttle back. And we're like, are we in tension? Are we in tension? Throttle back. And we're like, fuck you, boss. We're not throttling back until I know we're not going. And he says, you're out of tension. You're out of tension. And, we shut it down. So the reason that story came up when you brought that up was about the digital flight controls. So here's one of these just stupid things that happens with military stuff. The F-14A had analog flight controls up until just before that deployment. And the Navy had installed new digital flight controls, far superior. It was a huge, huge upgrade in performance. But the box that was in the back of the jet was a little bit bigger than the older ones it replaced. And because it was a little bit bigger, when they slid it in there, it was up against a wire bundle. And what had happened is vibrations just from repeated flying and stuff had caused that wire bundle to chafe. And wouldn't you know it, we had the dumb luck that the two wires that shorted out first turned on our fuel dump. So we were dumping 1,500 pounds a minute of jet fuel out the back, right between our two big engines and afterburner. Yeah, it was pretty gnarly.
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying.
Like light a fluid on a fire.
I'll tell you what, they had that jet fixed in a few days and it was back up flying. It was singed, but they did a great job on that.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's nuts.
Crazy story. Crazy story. But yeah, so that workup was for our 2001 deployment. I think I sent you guys that picture. The interesting story is we had done a four ship flyby on the Hudson River for the 4th of July in 2000. I forget what boat. I think it was the Kennedy. Maybe was up in the river, and Bill Clinton was on deck and stuff. We flew over, and there's 8,000 flashes going off and stuff. There's lots of great pictures from that flyby. But a year later, we'd been in the Persian Gulf for almost 6 months. We went through the Straits of Hormuz on the night of September 8th into September 9th of 2001. Now, the interesting thing about that is normally you would go home, through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, through the Mediterranean, the short way home across the Atlantic. For some reason, we were breaking precedent. It had been about 20 years since a nuclear ship was allowed in port in South Africa. So we were headed to South Africa for a port visit. On 9/11, everyone's tired. It's a long deployment. Everybody's pretty much racked out at this point. So I'm sitting in the ready room by myself, me and the duty officer. I'm in my flight gear because they're getting ready to bring a bird up for a post-maintenance check flight. So I'm just sitting there waiting for it to get up to the roof, watching TV. And, we watched that plane hit the first tower. My first thought was, some guy had a heart attack or, wasn't paying attention. He flew his Cirrus into the building or something like that. But when we saw that second plane hit, just like everybody else, we knew what was going on right away. The eerie thing about it is it was only minutes before we turned the ship around. You could feel the ship turn. I mean, we turned around, boom, and we were headed for the coast of Pakistan just like that. Pretty crazy story.
That's nuts.
Pretty crazy story. So, the Lincoln came over from Japan, so we had two carriers there. We were the night carrier. And we were the first guys in there.
So what are you doing? Like the very first of war? I mean, war hasn't even really started yet. What were you doing over there?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what. There's something about the first night of the war, and I was very lucky because I say lucky. That might sound sick. Kosovo, boom, we were there. 9/11, boom, we were there. There is nothing like the first night of war. If you want to get jacked on some adrenaline, whew. Yeah, and we had to wait a couple weeks before we could fly strike missions because State Department had to, make arrangements for overflight of Pakistan and to get tankers in there and all that stuff. So we had a couple weeks to just wait for all that to happen, and so we got lots of intel briefs. And I'll tell you where they scared the bejesus out of us. The thing that stands out in my mind the most is if you end up on the ground in Afghanistan and you are captured, you can expect to have your skin peeled off you while you're alive.
My gosh.
Oh yeah. I was like, damn, I guess we're not doing that. That's why that thing happened with Jake and the tanker. But we were pretty scared of that. As a matter of fact, normally we carry a sidearm, when we're going into Indian country, but we're fly boys. We don't put a mag in there. We usually have them in a plastic bag because I'll tell you the worst thing you can do in a cockpit is lose a round or a tool or something like that. You never know where it's going to end up. So normally we didn't do that, but a lot of guys got in the habit of making sure they had a mag in there for the only reason that they wanted to make sure they took themselves out before the Taliban got them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's how scared they had us. But we took out all their air defenses in a couple of days, and we bombed a lot of airplanes sitting on the ground. I mean, they didn't launch anything. But yeah, we spent the next few weeks before we got relieved by the carrier behind us, just blowing up everything we could blow up. So lots of armor, airplanes sitting on the deck, some surface to air missile defenses. But I'll tell you what, we spent a lot of time dropping laser guided bombs on rusty old trucks and just,
yeah.
I can't believe how much weaponry we put on stuff that probably wasn't worth anything.
Bicycles.
Oh yeah.
That was especially when we came in, because this is where we really started playing with y'all. I was a JTAC, and that was one of the best things, man, is when we got to start talking with you guys. I definitely switched things.
I got a story about that. So I think, I got to confirm this in my logbook, I think it was the third or fourth night of the war. We're up on deck, getting in the airplane. I think I was strapping in at the time, and our intel guy comes running up, and he's like, hey, and he, climbs up the ladder. Yeah, this doesn't normally happen. You don't see the intel guy up on the flight deck, but he comes up. He's like, hey, we got high value targets. Is Bin Laden and all his top dudes. They're in this house in Kabul, and we don't have coordinates for it. But here's all the imagery I've got of downtown Kabul with grid overlaid on it. When you get up there, here's the call sign, here's the frequency, talk to this guy and work with him. Hot diggity, man. That's, first week of the war, I'm in the right place at the right time, right? So, we hit the tanker a couple times and get up there. It's about 800 miles away. But we hit the tanker a couple of times. We check in with this guy, and he had to be an agency guy, I'm figuring, because he was on the ground down the street from this house that we were talking about. I'm picturing him with the beard and the earpiece and the robes, but probably, I don't know. I never saw him, of course, but it was the longest talk on you've ever, if you're JTAC, those talk-ons can be rough. Think about an urban talk-on with no reference points whatsoever. So we started up in the mountains north of Kabul, and there's one wash that kind of stuck out, and we just worked that down. It was probably a 30, 40-minute talk-on. I mean, it was painful. And by a talk-on, what I mean is, we've got a lantern pod on there, which is an infrared targeting pod with a laser. It's camera. And he's got to tell us, go south on this road, 4 clicks and, make a left and then go over there and there's the Piggly Wiggly. It was just crazy, crazy stuff. But he finally gets on the house. I described the house. He said, yep, that's it. There's some SUVs parked out behind it, all this stuff. We are sure this is the house. So I put the laser on it. I now have some precision coordinates, and, we pass that along through the network. But you would think the next thing that was going to happen after that would have been that we would have put a weapon down on that. Wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. I would. We talked in the cockpit. We're like, God dang it, we want to drop this bomb. We're getting antsy. We held for a couple hours. We just want to put that bomb down. And we even discussed in the cockpit, fuck it, let's just lay it down. Let's just do it. Let's just get this done. And we were lieutenants. I don't want to go Leavenworth. You know, who knows what's going to happen if you do something like that. So here's what happened. So we never got to drop. We handed off, I think, a couple Hornets off the Lincoln. The day carrier came and relieved us, and I think a couple other guys after them. And eventually the next day, a couple Strike Eagles out of Qatar. Man, this is what the Air Force does. The Air Force controls the Combined Air Operations Center. So they match air assets with missions. So they got this sweet ass mission. They're going to go get the house that bin Laden's in. So they won't let the Navy do it. They have a KC-10 drag these two airplanes all the way down through the straits because they can't overfly Iran. So they drag them all the way down there. I mean, that must have been a 20-hour freaking flight for those guys, but they bombed an empty house. He got away. So we could have had him real early. And I'll tell you, it took me a lot of years to start asking, well, why didn't we get weapons release authorization? You know, story I got, in the days that followed were that, we talked to the AWACS. The AWACS had to go back to Fifth Fleet. Fifth Fleet had to go to CENTCOM. CENTCOM had to go to Langley. They didn't make sure they didn't have an asset in there. So my understanding at the time was we didn't get weapons release because we were concerned about, killing one of our own guys.
That's understandable.
It is, Marcus. And at the time I was okay with that. I was okay with that for a lot of years. A lot of things had to happen in history before I started asking questions about, why didn't our ROE include that if it's the ace of spades, you're cleared weird? Why not? And, if your son or your husband's a CIA guy and he gets taken out by that, I mean, look at what happened afterwards. Hindsight's always 20/20, but look at the horrible waste of life and treasure that went on. Didn't make anybody's life better. That whole thing's an atrocity in my mind. If I'm a CIA guy who's so deep cover that I'm in the house with bin Laden, I'll turn a beacon on in my pocket to prevent what happened afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
My view. But, all that happened.
Yeah.
So there we go.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm sure throughout the whole war, there were many instances. There has to be.
I know of a couple.
Yeah, many instances where it was, so close to getting him. But for whatever reason, it just didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. More stuff's coming out now. I mean, they're saying he was in Iran there pretty quick after the war kicked off. So who knows, man?
Yeah.
We don't.
I know where he was on his last day.
Yeah, you do.
And I know who went and saw him. I know that's an absolute fact.
Candygram from Mongo.
Candygram from Mongo.
That's nuts.
They did great. So how long did you fly? How many tours did you do?
I did 3 deployments in the F-14. After that tour in VF-14, went back to Oceana. Was an instructor in the F-14 training squadron there, VF-11 Grim Reapers. Shut that squadron down. The F-14 was getting ready to retire.
Yeah, they retired that bird too, right?
Yeah,
So, just to be clear, because I don't speak aviator at all, is the F-14 the Top Gun?
That's Tomcat.
Okay.
That's the one with the swing wings.
Okay.
The wings fold back. It's the one that you saw in the first Top Gun.
Okay.
It was so popular. That and the MiG-28.
I'm trying to picture it.
With
in
a
my
little
head,
hat tip in the second one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's right.
most important scene
That's
in the
right.
movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was magic. It actually
Tom
started
Cruise.
up the first try.
Yeah, man. Great movie.
Okay.
It was a great movie.
See, if pilots signed off on it, that's how you know. Like, I've talked to a lot of wing guys, and they were always like, it was good.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, we had a couple old Tomcat guys, JJ Cummings, Yank Cummings, good buddy of mine, with some other advisors that were right up in the filming of that movie. So all that stuff you saw in the cockpit was dead on balls accurate, man. They were brutal. They made sure there was no cheese. I'm even watching, switchology on the throttle and stick and stuff in the movie. I'm like, yep, that's right. I mean, it was super accurate regarding what it's like in the cockpit.
Let's be real. If you're listening to this show, there's a good chance that you already believe in standing your ground and defending what matters the most. That's why we're so proud to partner with armslist.com, America's firearms marketplace. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or trade, Armslist makes it easy. You can shop locally for face-to-face deals, or you can browse nationwide listings from over 8,000 licensed dealers. And the best part, there is no sales fees. No nonsense. Just a low monthly membership and full access. If you need quick cash, you can use their We Buy Any Gun tool. You can list your firearm and get real offers from licensed FFL holders right in your area. It's fast, secure, and completely private. And if you're an active duty or a veteran, you can even join the Arms List Heroes program and lock in a lifetime membership for just $2.99 a month. Right now, Arms List is giving Team Never Quit listeners an exclusive discount. So go head on over to armslist.com/TNQ and use the code TNQ to get your first month of premium membership for just 99 cents. Join the fight and come get what they want to take. That is armslist.com/TNQ.
Now that mission profile was just stupid. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody would ever do that. But you had to make a
Good for TV, man.
Good for TV. No, it was entertaining.
Yeah.
And why do they have to? Why was Bob such a dork, man? Why can't they have a cool Rio? I'm a Rio. I'm not a pilot. I'm a backseater. Why do they always got to be a dork? Ask any Tomcat front seat. Ask Jake. I mean, you can't do anything with that airplane if the guy in the back doesn't have his act together. I mean, it was built in the 70s. It was a lot.
Bob was all right. Hey, some dorks are awesome, man. He's an awesome dork.
Nerds rule the world, man.
Are all pilots that fly fighter jets officers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a rule. You're not going to put an enlisted guy in there.
Yeah. I figured. I didn't know for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's special trust and confidence. When you have a
Yeah.
weapon system that's that powerful, you're making strategic, national strategic decisions,
Yeah.
at the office every day, and that's one great thing about that. That's why the Navy's better than the Air Force. Because, remember back in the days, the tall ships, the wooden ships, they went over the horizon. I mean, that guy was master and commander. I mean, he's making national security decisions. And so there's that it's deep in the culture of the Navy that, we trust you to make the right call.
Mhm.
You're the guy on the scene, and so, some good judgment needs to be shown, but also to fly an airplane like that, you got to realize you got to be an expert in meteorology, fluid dynamics, physics, ballistics, comms, radar, weapons system. I mean, it's a lot. It takes you, 3 to 4 years to
At
be
least.
barely competent.
Yeah, at least.
And you show up at the fleet and it's shut the hell up and don't screw anything up, new guy. So
You
you
have
got
a
another
big
year.
brain.
It's a set of aptitudes that some people have and some people don't, just
Yeah.
like anything else. I can't do a watercolor to save my life. So.
I got you.
Hey, some people are good at that.
That's a good way to say that, though.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy on that.
Well, it's just a different skill set,
Yeah.
Like, I got a buddy of mine, one of my best buddies, Teaser, man, from Tennessee. When he opens his mouth, he's country. I mean, country. And then you find out he's a jet jockey. Like, there's no way they let you fly planes. No way. And he's the best at it.
What kind of plane was it?
18. Super Hornet
I
guy.
know a couple guys like that.
Yeah, man.
My buddy Van Kaiser from Greenbow, Alabama. Coo, coo, coo. Yeah,
Those
guys
boys
like
can
that.
fly the hell out of those planes, man.
Oh yeah, man. It's heavy equipment. It's like
Heavy
driving
equipment.
a tractor. That's what people ask me what I did in the Navy. I said I was a heavy equipment operator.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, it's
okay.
Pull them off
hydraulics,
the
it's
freaking
engines,
tractor,
it's-
man, and throw them in a jet, dude, and they will get it done.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Because he did. He could fly the freaking wings off that thing, man.
Yeah, he flew over us at a party and we
Yeah,
got
he's
to
retired
see it.
now, so we can tell the story.
Yeah, it was really
Bro,
cool.
He came over the wood line and dropped down. We must have been 50 people there, right?
Yeah,
At least in this field. And he radios in over a cell phone. And he's like, I'm coming in. So we pull everybody outside of the barn. We're having a crawfish bowl. And man, 500 yards, there's a tree line. You could see him come down, drop down, rolled over to do a panel check, freaking hung us the finger. You could see it plain as day. I could hit him with a baseball.
That's a good day at the office,
Bro,
isn't it?
I mean, it was awesome. I mean, he rolled that thing back over, hit full burn, blew people down, knocked stuff off the freaking rail system. The neighbors in the other farms called in, thought it was an earthquake. They were like, God, man, there's something.
They thought we were under attack.
Under attack.
Yeah.
And he was gone in a second, man. That thing showed up about an hour and a half later and just had the best time.
Yeah.
Great dude.
Why are you going to strap an explosive-laden rocket to your ass if you can't do something fun with it?
Man.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Do a flyby on a tower at 100, I mean, that's the thing. You got to do that.
Yeah, that was so funny.
I'll never forget it. It's one of the highlights of my life watching him do that.
Yeah,
he looked cool doing it, the whole 9 yards, man.
I'll tell you what, we've really cooled out on that stuff now. I mean, the culture's changed a lot, especially in the Navy. When the F-14 community was the old school hair on fire fighter guy, just big and loud and drink hard, fly hard, everything's hard. It's a little different world there now. I'm not saying we're not effective or professional.
I thought I could drink till I got hemmed up in an O club with some pilots. They turned it up. It was one of the best times I ever had at JTAC school.
You were expected. So Friday, the Oceana O Club, I'll tell you why. I'll back off on that one. The Oceana O Club, pre 9/11 was one of the hottest bars in Virginia Beach. They had a band inside, they had a band outside. On the radio, it was, "Come on, ladies, get your own Top Gun." And
yeah, because you lost that love and feeling.
I hate it when she does that.
I hate it when she does that, man. All right,
with a woman this time.
When did you, carnal knowledge of a lady. When did you rotate out
of
the service?
2012, retired in 2012.
Correct.
But yeah, we got to get to that 2005 deployment.
Yeah,
so
let's
a lot
talk about that.
Yeah, a lot happened in there. So yeah, I spent a couple of years as an instructor at VF 101. The final cadre there, which felt kind of special. It was the end of an era for sure. But my next assignment was Strike Operations Officer at Carrier Air Wing 8. So real quick, the way the command structure on a carrier is. So there's a carrier strike group, which is a whole bunch of ships, maybe a couple submarines. There's a one-star admiral that is in command of the strike group. He's, of course, on the aircraft carrier. On the aircraft carrier, you've got the captain of the ship and you've got the air wing commander. The air wing commander is the guy that all the squadron commanders report to. The captain of the ship, obviously, keeps the airport going where it needs to go. So I was on the Air Wing Commander's staff in the capacity of Strike Operations Officer. So as Strike Operations Officer, my duties were many, but amongst them was, advising the Air Wing Commander on, standardized weapons loadouts, tactics, weapons employment, TTPs, we call them tactics, techniques, and procedures, stuff like that. And this is where my story gets pretty interesting. So, let me back up a little bit. Kosovo, Iraq, Afghanistan. We set all kinds of records for the number of pave way 2 laser-guided bombs we've dropped. I know you're familiar with that, right? So, what a pave way 2 is, if you take a dumb bomb, just a bomb body, looks like a fish, you slap some fins on it, you fly your airplane over your target, and there's some ballistic release point where if you let that thing go, it's going to be pretty close to your target. But there's all kinds of factors you can't account for in there. Windage being a huge one, right? Because you don't know what the winds are at various altitudes through that flight, right? So that's World War II style dumb bombing, we call that. So when we came up with these laser kits in Vietnam, we got a lot better. That's where precision bombing started. So what you would do with these things is you would fly the airplane into the ballistic release point or something close to that. You would release the bomb and you would let it fall ballistically at first. And at some point you would turn on a laser. Now, laser has a pulse code programmed into it that is also programmed into the bomb. So when it sees that laser spot with a seeker head on the front of the bomb, now it has smart fins that deflect instead of like a dumb bomb that just has, fixed wings on it essentially. So by being able to steer the bomb a little bit, it seeks that laser spot and it flies the bomb in. Now, there are some problems with this. One problem is that these bombs did not have proportional guidance. And what I mean by that is if the bomb sees a laser spot and it gets off course a little bit, well, you would just want a little fin deflection, just a little correction. Or if it's off by a lot, then you want a bigger fin deflection. That seems kind of obvious. But because of, technology just wasn't there when these things were built, what they had was called bang bang guidance, which means when it sees that laser spot and it starts its guidance profile, if it's a little high, it'll slam those fins over and go low. Well, it's going to go low, then it's going to see that it's high, that it's low, and then it's going to slam them high. So those bombs, you see them coming in like this. You've probably seen those before. You see those things going like this. That's that bang bang guidance. Here's one. It's good because it's a simple and reliable system. It is bad for this reason. When that bomb is in free fall and you start deflecting those fins radically like that, what you're doing is you're creating a lot of drag and you're bleeding off kinetic energy, which causes the bomb to fall below the original trajectory that it was on. And the further, the more time you laze, the further below it gets. So, we talk about something called the wire. So if my airplane's here and my target's here, that line between the airplane and the target, you call that a wire. Now, obviously, the ballistic trajectory is going to go above that, but from any point in the trajectory, you have a new wire. So what happens is that wire gets lower and lower and lower as you deflect these fins. So these bombs are coming in more and more shallow. Remember that the bombs are going above the wire, below the wire, above the wire, below the wire. So you've basically got a coin toss. When it's getting close to the ground, if it's above the wire, you're great because it's going to nose down into the target. You want that. But if it's below the wire and correcting up, it hits the ground short of the target. We saw a lot of short hits in Kosovo and all these other, in Afghanistan and stuff. There's two schools of thought on when to turn that laser on. When do you start the precision guidance? And this is interesting. This is where humans and personalities come into tactics. So on my first deployment back in VF-14, also carrier Air Wing 8, by the way, we had two F-14 squadrons. Now, my skipper was Slapshot Carter, pretty famous guy in the Navy and the F-14 community, and I'll leave the other guy out of it. But we had a sister squadron over there, and those guys hated each other. They had some old beef, maybe from back at the academy when they were kids. I have no idea what the beef was, but man, our front office and their front office did not get along at all. And one of the things that came out of that is they just we did everything different. If they did it this way, we had to do it that way. If we did it this way, they had to do it. It was stupid. My squadron had a lot of confidence in the ability of our sensors and our weapons control systems to compute a good ballistic release point. And because of that, we held on to the belief that you want to turn that laser on very late. I don't know if I can say how much time, but very late in the time of fall, just the last few seconds, because that keeps that bomb on that original trajectory. So it's got a nice steep terminal trajectory. Bomb's going nice and fast. It hasn't bled off all that energy from all that bang, bang. It's just a couple seconds of it sweetening up at the end. And what we found was our bombs are hitting just fine. As a matter of fact, because they're nice and fast when they get down low. We had a lot of moving target deliveries in Kosovo, armor trucks, stuff like that. We had no TTPs for how to pull lead on a moving target using that system. And so what we found is you just kind of throw it out in front of them and you just wait till the last couple of seconds, you turn the laser on, and those things, man, they'd make right turns, left turns. I mean, it's insane. A 500-pound bomb going 1,000 feet per second. You wouldn't believe how those things could turn a corner. It was crazy. We were flying them into railroad tunnels, taking out armor in Kosovo, and we could fly right in the tunnel. It was crazy. Our sister squadron went the other way. They believed in continuous lasing. Now, here's the argument for continuous lasing. That seeker head has a conical field of view. So when it comes off the airplane, you're up at altitude, that field of view on the ground is a huge area, massive area. No chance it's going to miss that laser spot. In theory, if you're off a little bit when you release the bomb, or maybe the winds are extreme or something like that, that thing wanders a little bit. it's theoretically possible that you could turn the laser on and the laser spot would be outside of that seeker's field of view, in which case that bomb would just fall dumb. Who knows where it's going to go? Now, those we had no rules about. Should you delay delays? Should you continue? There were no rules. And this is where Top Gun comes in. So, you brought up the movies, great movies. That is not what Top Gun is. Top Gun is, think of it as a center of excellence. This is where you send, some really sharp guys, and they spend a few years just really sharpening their edge. They get very, very good at briefing and debriefing and planning and flying. But they also, develop tactics and techniques and procedures and all this other stuff. So it's really a schoolhouse. And the way Top Gun functions is you send a guy from your squadron. He goes through the class, gets his Top Gun patch, and he would come back to the squadron to be a training officer. So he's the one, senior lieutenant who's been through the class. And the reason for that is because that way we have standardized tactics. Back before Top Gun, it used to be what your skipper wants to do. The squadrons were all over the place. So a dude would leave one squadron, go to another squadron. He's got to learn all over. Top Gun standardized, optimized, upped our game in every way. Top Gun's fantastic. I mean, it's why naval aviation is so effective. So if you feel like I'm bashing Top Gun at any point here, I am not. It is excellent. But Top Gun recommends. So Top Gun never tells you, you will turn the laser on at this time. They say, in this situation, you should turn it on at this time. In this situation, you should turn it on at that time. But remember, Master and Commander. You're, in my mind, you do what's going to work in that tactical situation because, I don't care how good the work those guys did. You get out on the battlefield and that's not what you plan for, right?
Yeah.
That happens all the time. So fast forward. So we come out of Kosovo with this continuous lays, delayed lays thing, right? So these guys are continuous lasing, but those bombs are falling short all the time. We can see that the continuous lasing is just not needed. It actually hurts you. But what happens is a couple guys from my squadron, a couple guys from the other squadron, they all end up at Top Gun. And now they're having a big locking of the horns over when to turn the laser on. And the mechanics of what went on behind the veil that's something I'm excavating right now. It's a very interesting story and people are willing to talk about it. But what ended up happening is they basically split the baby and they said above this altitude, you can delayed lays, but below this altitude, you can continuous lays. And so those recommendations came out sometime between my leaving the fleet and then coming back on that 2005, 2006 deployment. So back to strike operations. So I'm now the strike operations officer and I've had a shit ton of experience with these pay weight. I mean, I dropped a lot of them. My commanding officer, former Top Gun CO, and my deputy and his deputy, also a former Top Gun commanding officer, some of the finest fighter pilots you will ever meet on planet Earth. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. These are good men. I love them. They are my brothers, my mentors, great dudes. In no way am I saying anything personal about these guys. When people have different experiences and you make decisions based on what you know. Okay, these guys had never dropped a bomb in combat. And it took me many years to figure out why I couldn't convince them that we were setting ourselves up for trouble. But I eventually figured it out. And they weren't going to go against Top Gun's recommendations the first time they got out into combat, because I'm sure in their minds, they haven't told me this, but I'm sure that would invalidate the rigor that they believed in at Top Gun. So what happened was, our Air Wing commander put out a recommendation about how we wanted to drop bombs in Iraq in 2005. What's going on in 2005? This is when we're trying to piece together all the networks, all these safe houses. Shit was going down in Fallujah at that time. Mosul was nasty. There was a lot going on. But most of our weapons employment was in populated areas, urban targets, right? You don't know if a good guy's next door. So collateral damage is a huge concern here. And, I'm studying the mission reports from the boat we're about to replace as we're headed over to the Gulf. And I'm like, oh shit, man, we got all these urban target deliveries. So, I go to my boss and I'm like, hey, boss, I think we need to go high and slow and we need to lays everything. It's obvious to me, but if you get high over the target, well, that bomb's almost straight down, right? I mean, a hot air balloon would be the ideal place to drop a bomb from. I mean, that thing's coming straight down. You're not going to have that trajectory sag we talked about. Once you start moving, now that becomes a factor. And the faster you go, the more of a factor it is, because as you go faster and faster in an airplane about to drop a bomb, your release point gets farther and farther from the target. That's a longer time of fall. And because that angle gets lower and lower, it exacerbates those short hits due to trajectory sag. So, my air wing commander said, when we deploy a weapon, I want everybody going 500 knots and we're going to continuous laze everything. My bad. He did not say that. We are going to follow Top Gun recommendations. So remember, there's this split the baby altitude that we're dealing with here. Now, at that time, there's not much of a surface to air threat. There's no surface to air threat. We have established air supremacy at this point. So we're flying around much lower than we usually do. And there's other stuff above us. There's all kinds of black aircraft and drones and all kinds of crazy stuff. I'll tell you, in Kosovo in particular, I think the most dangerous thing was running into a airplane that wasn't squawking or something. There's all kinds of crazy stuff flying around. It was nuts. But we get into Iraq in 2005 anyway, and it's busy there. So, my boss understands that a bomb going fast is better than a bomb going slower. And so he says, I want all deliveries downwind and doing at least 500 knots. We're going to follow Top Gun recommends. Well, I went running down to his office. I'm like, no. Top Gun this is not right. You want to pick your run-in heading so that if there is a clear area adjacent to your target, you want to run in over that clear area, because if you have a short hit, well, now you're just hitting dirt. Yes. If you go with the wind, your speed over the ground is faster, but then the wind's picking your run-in heading. The wind's picking what's short of your target that you're trying to service. And, that's not good. And then the continuous lazing makes it even worse. So what I see here is that we're setting ourselves up for some problems. And, I went down to the boss's office multiple times and, tried my best to convince him that I was right. And, he listened to me, but the way I saw what happened there was a personal failure. I failed to compel him to the right answer. That's the way I took it on. And there's some childhood stuff behind that and all that. I mean, this is what we find out later. But I just couldn't get him there. So one night I'm walking down the P-way and the deputy commander grabs me and says, Slider, I love how passionate you are about this thing, but you're pissing the boss off. You got to stop. Aye, sir. I mean, I'm in 04. He's my boss in 06, Aye, sir. Fast forward a couple months. We've got a mission up northern Iraq we get sent to near this town called Baji, little town. It's on MSR Tampa between Baghdad and Mosul, up there maybe 30, 40 miles northwest of Baghdad. The night before, some guys were outside the wire coming back in their convoy, and they took an IED and they lost a vehicle and a couple of their guys. That was the night before we got there. So we get up there and we're just doing, but we call them box hops. So you just go up there and you got a square and you just hang out until somebody needs some air, So we're hanging out and all of a sudden we get the call. And what happened was an Iraqi woman, this was well after curfew. The curfew was pretty strict. An Iraqi woman had gone to the Iraqi police station and said, hey, I saw some shady looking dudes digging in the road, putting some wires out there. And, of course, it's a little town. Everybody knew an IED had blown up there the night before. So she tells the police, they get a terp. They call the fob. We had a little fob out there. They call the fob, tell them what's going on. It's just like crazy operator game. Once again, we have no coordinates. Somewhere in there, they launch a Hunter UAV. And we've got a video downlink at this point called Rover. This was a new thing for the Tomcat. So our JTAC, do you remember Rover? JTACs could see our video from our sensors. Yeah. So that was brand new for us back then. Great thing. But he does his big long talk on, we get it in there. He's watching on the Rover. He said, yep, that's them right there. And so we watch them for a while, and they're peeking out from behind the building. And at one point, some guy runs out and fiddles with something in the road and goes back there. I mean, it was what we thought it was. So they ask us to strafe these guys. So Tomcat has a Gatling gun in the nose, but it's not on a gimbal or anything like that. You aim that gun by pointing the airplane at your target. What's a gun? What's the range on a 30 millimeter cannon or a 20 millimeter cannon? It's not a lot. So you got to snuggle up right in there tight on a target if you want to shoot something. It's at night and we're on goggles. So we set up, I get the lantern pod in there, I designate the target. So what happens in the pilot's HUD is he gets a little diamond that shows that target designation. So basically what he's doing, because it's dark, you can't see shit. We come up, we roll over on our back, level the wings, make some adjustments, point the nose at the target, and he's just watching the symbology on the HUD because you can't really see the ground. You can't look through the HUD with your goggles and see the HUD. It's just all incompatible. So he's basically just putting a symbol on a symbol, squeezes a trigger, and when all those hot gases come out of the front of the airplane, it's flames, and your goggles go bright green, and they blind you. And we're pointed at the ground going 500 knots. And so he starts pulling, and we're grunt. We found out later we probably bottomed out about 250, 300 feet, which when you're going 500 knots is, that was a close one. But of course, we sprayed bullets all over the place and didn't get these guys, which was pretty frustrating. So we asked them if we could put a paveway down, which is really what we should have done in the first place, because all those guys were in a little cluster. We would have had them, but we missed those guys. So now they know we're there, obviously. We just went zorching overhead, spraying bullets. These guys all scatter into various houses, and they've still got the Hunter UAV on them, and they can see where they go. And one house had 2 or 3 guys in it. That was the cluster, the biggest cluster of what was left of those guys. So they say, we put a bomb down on that. Now, here's where the problem comes. The guy in the front seat, remember, I'm on air wing staff. I'm not in a squadron. So I'm a guest air crew in this airplane. The guy in the front seat is a young guy, first deployment. He was one of my students in the F-14 when I was an instructor, but had never dropped a bomb in combat. And we had a cockpit argument because I now had a moral dilemma. I said, I know the right thing to do here because the wind was not blowing the right way. There were all houses short of that target. We tried to get a higher altitude block. We could not get above that split the baby altitude that Top Gun had come up with. We kind of were painted in a box. And so, man, I wish I hadn't turned the tape off, but I turned the tape off and I tried to convince this young guy to, that we needed to come in on a different heading, slower, and delayed lays this bomb. But, I can't fault him for this. I mean, he was following orders. In no way do I, he's a great guy, as a matter of fact. Love the guy. But, at that moment I was frustrated with him. But we turn the tape back on and what's going to happen here, right? So we come on in and it's a lot of work. The workload in the cockpit when you're delivering a weapon is very, very high. There's a lot of switchology, a lot of symbology you got to get right. There's just a lot of things you got to do. And we're talking on the radio and it's just a lot. And I just hadn't decided if I was going to turn that laser on right away or not. And once you turn it on, you got to leave it on because once it sees that spot, it starts doing its thing and trying to guide. So if you turn the laser off, who knows where that bomb's going to go. So we get to our release point, gadunk, the bomb comes off and my finger just went on the laser. I had not made the decision. Was I going to follow orders or do what I know is right? I followed orders. Hit the house short of that target. Next day, skipper calls me in his office. There's some news stories. I think I sent you guys those. There's some news stories out there. Killed a 3-generation family of innocent Iraqis. totally needless. You know, it just didn't need to happen. But the story gets better. Gets worse, but it gets better later. So, you know, it was in the news, and there were some left-leaning newspapers that, you know, murderers and all this. You know, I read all that stuff, going, God damn, man, we're the good guys here. You know, it was just an awful thing. And, you know, we get very good at compartmentalization. It's very important when you're in combat. Some bad shit happens. You put it in a box and you keep going, because you can't let that distract you. All that matters is what's in front of you at the moment, right? And we get very, very good at that. And, you know, I spent my whole life, I call it collecting elephants. I just kept putting elephants in boxes. You know, I like to talk about, remember Raiders of the Lost Ark? Remember when they put the Ark in a box and they stuffed it in that warehouse? Yeah, that's what my warehouse full of elephants looked like. It was this stuff from my childhood and all kinds of, it was just a lot. But, you know, that elephant went in there, but I was mad. And I wasn't mad at my boss or the deputy. Those guys were awesome. I was mad because I knew what was right and I couldn't convince people to do it. And I did not know what a moral injury was at that point. There's a lot of bad shit that happened between then and figuring out what that meant. But that was a deep moral injury. I just felt, I mean, I pictured those poor people in their beds blowing up, you know, night after night after night. It was a lot to carry around. But I did do something else. I had seen so many of these Paveway 2 weapons used over my multiple deployments that I knew the numbers in our tables were not correct. The impact angles that the engineers predicted were not what was happening out in the field. I knew we were having a lot of shallow hits. And so I set out to prove that. That model they use, by the way, is called the 6 DOF model, 6 degrees of freedom. So there's 6 inputs in there, and that puts you on the ballistic profile. But I knew it was wrong. And so I'm already working, you know, 14-hour days here, but I'm on a mission from God. So I went and took a whole bunch of weapons deliveries, tapes, and I did frame grabs. And I grabbed a whole bunch of frames right at weapons release, and I grabbed a whole bunch of frames right at impact. And I drew a whole bunch of lines and did a bunch of math and all this stuff. And I came up with a method for estimating bomb impact angles when you are offset. So if I'm flying straight at a target, I drop that bomb, I got to turn because I need to offset. I need to make sure that that laser isn't obscured by my own aircraft and that it can get in there. And I also don't want to fly directly over the target because the bomb gets there at the same time. And then my sensor spins around and that'll cause the spot to wander. So we do these offsets. So when you do this offset and the bomb comes in, well, now you got to do some math to figure out what the actual impact angle is versus the apparent impact angle. So I do this huge science project. I mean, I'm barely sleeping. I put all this stuff together, and I'll tell you what, my air wing commander and my deputy air wing commander were princes. They said, Slider, you're right, and we're going to help you prove it. And they absolutely interfaced with Top Gun. They helped me do a book report. And we shepherded that in there. And after some time, Top Gun went ahead and changed their recommendations about this lasing.
Good.
About 7 years later on a therapist's couch, he pointed out that the fact that it happened to me might have saved a lot of lives because I knew how to do the math.
Yeah.
But I beat myself up for a lot of years before I got to that.
Well, almost every great thing that is invented or whatever is because of some massive failure.
Yeah, it happens all the time. You can't see it when you're in it, though.
Yeah.
I was just trying to do the right thing. I just didn't see it, and I was torn up from that. As a matter of fact, I had done a video. So the fighter ball, it's basically the prom for fighter pilots, fighter fling, we used to call it. My buddy Burns Hess and I did the final fighter fling Tomcat video. It was an epic video production. It was a beautiful thing. And you can find it on YouTube or something like that. But, my bosses knew I had done that. I had a little bit of skill with the video. Burns was certainly much better than me, but a little bit of skill with that. So they asked me to put together an end of cruise video. And I told them I didn't want to do it. And they're like, no, Slider, you got to do it. And they're fun guys. They just wanted a fun video. I went down to my stateroom and I got some Rage Against the Machine. And I did a big fuck you video. It's on my YouTube channel if you want to go see that. I was mad. I wasn't mad at them. I was just mad. I was just mad because the whole thing was so unfair, and I was stewing in that. But anyway, I got home to my wife and my 2 young sons, and I wasn't the same. I didn't realize at the time. It took years, beyond it before I could look back and see what happened. But something changed on that deployment. And, I remember one time, we can't say to our wife back home what mission we flew that day, or did we drop a weapon or not, or we can't say that stuff on deployment. It's, oh, honey, I miss you, another Groundhog Day on the boat, whatever. And I know Christmas was coming up, and she said, oh, I'm so looking forward to you coming home. We were coming home in the spring, but she said, I'm so looking for you coming home. It's getting closer. And I said, I don't think I want to come home. And I hit send. And I went, what the hell was that? I don't know who wrote that. I mean, I don't know. Something changed. But I got back and I was pretty unhappy. Probably drinking too much. Definitely drinking too much. Just angry. Throttle stuck in afterburner all the time. It's like operator syndrome. It's the same thing. I mean, every time you launch, you got to be on the ball. I mean, you're at 100% all the time. You have to. The mission success and sometimes survival requires it. And after years and years and years of doing that stuff, your nervous system has adapted to a new operating point. And that just becomes how you are. I mean, you've seen it in all your bros too. Mm-hmm. We're seeing it more and more in fighter guys now too, along with some G-induced brain injuries, which we should talk about. But I didn't know any of that back then. All I knew was I was angry. I was hyper as hell. I couldn't control myself, screaming a lot. I was a mess. And I came home one day and my wife said, I want you out of the house. Didn't see it coming. But I mean, I was so lost at that point. I just left. That didn't make things better. More drinking, just a lot of stupid shit. Then I got cancer.
Oh my gosh.
So she throws me out of the house. 3 months later, I'm 42 years old. I'm diagnosed with prostate cancer.
My goodness.
Yeah. So where do you think prostate cancer comes from? I'm gonna throw something out there we can speculate about. Here's the life of a fighter aircrew in the Navy. Poor quality sleep. Probably not the best nutrition. Constant high stress for months at a time. Bathing in and drinking water contaminated with jet fuel. You're soaked in RF of every wavelength imaginable all the time. The G-forces associated with catapult shots and arrested landings deform your brain rather violently. You're flying with a 10,000 watt radar down by your feet. When you're at altitude, there's nothing between you and God but a piece of plexiglass. Why are guys getting prostate cancer? I don't know. We can guess about that, can't we? And I don't think they've figured that out. We're learning about the brain injuries, though. And I'll get to that. But I don't know what's going on. I think what was going on there was moral injury and probably physical damage as well. And what we're seeing now is that a lot of these guys are, they're pulling G's. Let's talk about pulling G's. So when you see like the Blue Angels carving a turn through the sky, it looks very graceful, doesn't it? It is not graceful in the cockpit. When you're pulling 6, 7 G's, it is heavy vibrations. And you'll pass out if you're not straining all the time. You're just fighting to maintain consciousness. And this is stretching that butter in your skull every which way and shaking it. And so what we're finding out now is that guys are getting these, they call them axonal stretching injuries. You pull your hamstring, you can pull a neuron too, and your entire brain gets damaged like that. And we're also seeing the kind of scarring, these blast waves that operators are seeing, all these repeated blast wave effects. We're seeing the same thing in fighter guys now. New York Times just did an article about it pretty recently. Dave Phillips I talked to him a lot about that. He came down to Ambio, by the way, because suicide rate's out of hand.
It's hitting y'all now too, then, huh?
Oh yeah. But there's more. Let's get back to that. So I get home, my wife throws me out of the house, drinking, all this stuff. They send me up to DC for my Screw You, You're Retiring tour. I find myself a typical divorce guy. I get too young, too hot, too crazy. Girlfriend was just making things worse for me. But I got out of the Navy and I went into business. So I had started a company called American TV To Go back in 2008. At one point I had orders to Japan and I wanted to see my Gators play football. And I had a buddy who was a TiVo hacker. Remember TiVos? They had those DirecTV TiVos. Yeah, it's just a computer. So you can pull the hard drive out and install some software on there so you have an interface and then you can modify it and all this stuff. So with my buddy's help, we figured out how to turn this thing into a streaming platform. This was 2008. This was early. So I could record movies and stuff on there, but I could live stream satellite television over the internet. In 2008, that was super edgy. My boys in Japan would connect to my system. They're watching NASCAR and all this stuff. And these guys are like, man, I want one of those before you come over here. And all these guys are clamoring for this. I'm like, damn, I got a business idea. And yeah, so I ran with that. And it took off pretty good. So by the time I retired from the Navy in 2012, I had a rapidly growing business. It really was doing well. And I ended up building a data center in Virginia Beach, and that really took off. And then I got into Bitcoin mining real early, like 2014. We had a large Bitcoin mining operation. I actually mined about 250 Bitcoins.
Oh my gosh.
That should be generational wealth at this point. We certainly never planned to spend those things, but I was going downhill. Here's why I was going downhill. The crazy girlfriend was on my case one day, and she got the best of me, and I had a panic attack. Now, I had never had a panic attack before. I probably would have told you it was made up by weak-minded pussies who couldn't keep their act together. That is, I assure you, that is not the case. This is the result of repeated neurological stress that just the bucket overflows and you have a panic attack. That's what it is. But I'm talking to her in the living room and all of a sudden my heart's pounding. I start sweating. I can't breathe. I mean, it was crazy. I was dizzy. I thought I was dying. And I ran outside to get some air. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I called a doctor. And he said, man, you're having a panic attack. He said, I'm going to write you a script. Go down to the pharmacy and get this script. The script was for Ativan. I'd never heard of Ativan before. I didn't know what that was. But he put me on 0.5 milligrams of Ativan 4 times a day and said, make an appointment and come in and see me. So I dutifully followed instructions. I took the Ativan. It made me feel better. Not huge, but it definitely made me feel a little better. So I followed his orders and I took the Ativan and I went in and saw him and he said, okay, we're just going to keep you on the Ativan 4 times a day. Now, my life's, my business is going great, but my health is going downhill. Like I know something's wrong at this. I am just not myself. And the Ativan has me feeling a little better. So I think this guy's a genius. He figured out what I need here. So I just keep taking the Ativan. What he didn't tell me, and I later found out it's because he didn't know, is that Ativan is very dangerous. This whole class of drugs, benzodiazepines are called, or benzos, are very dangerous. So that's Xanax, Ativan, Klonopin, Valium. There's a couple others, but those are the common ones. You rapidly build tolerance to this stuff. And when you build tolerance, you build dependence, meaning that if you stop taking it, you go through withdrawal. This is different than addiction. Addiction is a whole nother mechanism. I was never addicted to Ativan. I was dependent on Ativan because I dutifully followed my prescribing physician's instructions. He didn't warn me about interactions with alcohol. He didn't warn me about tolerance and dependence. He didn't warn me about dangerous withdrawals. Withdrawal from benzodiazepines can kill you, just like alcohol. He didn't warn me about paradoxical effects. And this is something to understand this, we've got to talk about a little bit. So Ativan, like all benzodiazepines, is a tranquilizer. It calms you down. The way it works is it attaches to your GABA receptors on your neurons. So I'll go a little bit scientific for a second here, but hang on with me. So GABA is a neurotransmitter. You have 120 something neurotransmitters in your body, but GABA is one of them. GABA is a calming neurotransmitter. So when your neurons secrete more GABA, it raises the firing threshold of those neurons so that they're less active, and you experience that as a calming effect. There's another neurotransmitter called glutamate. It's the opposite of GABA. It's on the other side of the scale. Glutamate's the go pedal. Glutamate is excitatory. If a woolly mammoth is charging at Gawk in his cave, he's going to get a shot of glutamate. That's going to be part of his fight or flight response. Okay. The way benzodiazepines work is they attach to the GABA receptor sites on your neurons, and think of it as they open them up so that the GABA that you have present there naturally is more effective. So it amplifies the effectiveness of the GABA. It's called a positive allotropic modulator. Here's how your body responds to that. Your body's always trying to return to equilibrium. Every system in your body has a feedback loop, so it's always trying to adjust itself and maintain stability. So when you introduce this stuff, 15 to 20% of the population has a profound neurological response to this stuff. What happens is your body counteracts it by producing more glutamate, which is excitatory, and it undermines it by shutting down GABA receptor sites on your neurons. Physical changes to your neurons, which take a very, very long time to reverse. So what happens is this thing that was initially calming becomes excitatory. But without forewarning, as a patient taking this stuff, you can't see it. And the reason is something called medication spellbinding. I'm overwhelmed by anxiety. The doctor gives me a tranquilizer. I feel better. I believe I need the tranquilizer. Ativan's a very short-acting medication, so it wears off. I got to wait till my next dose. I take it. I feel better. So I'm now correlating 1-to-1. I take the Ativan, I'm better. I must need the Ativan. But what I don't understand is I'm repeatedly rekindling my tolerance. So over years, my anxiety actually got much, much, much worse than it was when I started. But I didn't know it was the Ativan, and neither did my doctor, because he just didn't know. These guys aren't, I go around and do these continuing medical education, grand rounds and stuff. I talk to these doctors, they don't know. They just don't know how dangerous this stuff is. It's particularly bad for guys with PTSD. If you look at the VA DOD guidelines for the treatment of clinical guidelines for the treatment of PTSD, there's one page in there, I think I sent you guys a copy, that describes exactly what I went through. You do not give guys with PTS benzodiazepines because it guarantees a worse outcome. And so this is what happened to me. My anxiety got worse and worse and worse to the point where I was crawling out of my skin every freaking day. I couldn't sleep. I had brain fog, memory problems, rage, paranoia, all this stuff. It just got worse and worse and worse. Severe disinhibition, like I was drunk all the time. Derealization. The world didn't seem like it was real. It was like a movie. Depersonalization. I was not in charge of my life. So I was observing my body going through life and making all kinds of bad decisions, which included I couldn't sleep. And so I was at the VA hospital up in Hampton, and a kid threw me a bag of weed in the parking lot. I'd been talking to him inside. He was going through similar things. And he's like, "Oh man, weed's what you need." I'm like, "Man, I'll try anything." He gives me a bag of weed in the VA parking lot. Crazy, crazy story. So I go home, smoke some weed, and I fall asleep. I'm like, "Oh, thank God I can sleep." So I start using some weed to sleep. But I don't have any breaks. I'm severely disinhibited here. I am unable to do risk reward calculations. I mean, I'm a walking zombie. And so my cannabis use just got earlier and earlier in the day and then heavier and heavier. And I just, that stuff, I understand it's helpful for some people if used in moderation and infrequently. But if you're just, if you're Snoop Dogg, you're going to get lazy. It's not making you smarter or sharper or anything like that. So, I ended up just kind of abandoning my business. And it took years for that to happen, but I wasn't doing sales and support anymore. I mean, it just took a long time, but my business was in decline, and there was certainly a point where I should have just declared bankruptcy and walked away with my Bitcoins. But, I couldn't make good decisions at that point. So we pissed away 250 Bitcoins and, eventually went out of business, but it got worse.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's getting crazier here in a second. So, I'm a recently retired naval officer. I don't know where to get weed. And unfortunately, the crazy girlfriend had a nose for things like that. She walked into Lowe's, smelled weed on somebody, made friends with them, and now we had a source of weed. She's out of the picture at this point. She needed to go. But, man, I was huffing and puffing. And the folks that I got involved with were not the sort of folks I would normally associate with. And they saw that I had a little bit of money. And so they moved me on to some more profitable products, including cocaine. And I'll tell you what, I was barely functioning, but I could take a little bump of cocaine and I felt good for a little while. I felt like I was back. I was self-medicating. I didn't know what self-medicating was. I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff, but off to the race, the addiction races. So, I'll skip all the details, but next thing you know, I'm jamming needles in my arms, shooting cocaine, which is, the most dangerous
My gosh.
drug abuse that it's insane.
It's like the top of the line right there, right?
It doesn't get any worse than that.
That's
No,
nuts.
it doesn't get any worse than that. So, I'm tearing my arms
What,
up.
just because other stuff stops working? Or you're using it to counteract what was working? Probably no.
Mark, I was so far away from myself that anything that brought me back in that direction a little bit seemed like a gift from God.
Oh.
But it was the devil.
Oh.
It was absolutely the devil. So
I got a great piece of advice from a buddy of mine back in the day. I heard him say this. We were sitting around. He goes, man, I can't do cocaine. I like it too much.
The euphoria is incredible.
I felt that, dude. And I was like, you know what? I'm that's the way I am. That's why I never touch that stuff, because I would freaking love it.
Good call, coach. And I'll tell you, snorting it, is pretty euphoric. Injecting it's a whole nother level. It's so euphoric. I mean, it's like 5-MeO euphoric, but in like a dirty way. The 5-MeO is beautiful, and we'll get to that. But the cocaine's it's that powerful, but it's bad. And it's the most addictive substance on planet Earth. So anyway, I'm on a rocket sled to addiction, and I wasn't on that very long. But I did that like I do everything else at
full burn.
Oh, afterburner the whole time.
The whole time, right?
Oh yeah, woo! Yeah, I'm putting down.
That's the dangerous thing about our guys and gals. It's like, because of the life we live, man. If you somehow, some way get into that arena, man, it's like full burn.
Mm-hmm. I've seen it with so many guys. Yeah, it happens all the time. The guys who stay on the alcohol are lucky.
Right?
Yeah.
Just stay on that. Isn't that a horrible thing to say too? Like, hey, man,
that's a screwed up thing to say. But
I'm going to go ahead and say, don't stay on that.
Don't stay on the alcohol.
You know what we mean. You know what I mean. It's kind of like, don't do any of it if you can help yourself.
Well, right. And if you don't have the tools, this is the thing. We don't have the tools to reconcile these things that happen to us while we're in the service. I didn't know how to deal with this stuff. I went in the skipper's office and he's like, Slider, war is hell and bad shit happens. And, we've all reviewed the tapes and that was a perfect delivery. And, it's just bad stuff happens. True. But my soul was wounded.
Mm-hmm.
And then my wife threw me out. And then I went through cancer. I had prostate cancer. I had the operation and all that stuff. I, wasn't sure if my man parts were ever going to work. I mean, I was wearing diapers for a while because I was just leaking. I mean, it was, I lost my wife. I lost my family. I lost my manhood. I mean, I'm just going downhill and I have this crazy woman drives me nuts, have a panic attack, Ativan, weed, cocaine. I mean, I'm a drowning man and people keep throwing me anchors. You know, that's what happened. But anyway, so I tore myself up pretty good. It wasn't a long time, but, you know, I did a lot of damage. And, you know, one night I looked at myself in the mirror and had blood running down my arms. I don't know how to use a needle. I was out of my freaking mind. I was just tearing myself up. I looked at myself in the mirror and I just said, bro, you're going to die. I meant that shit. I mean, there were times when I was so screwed up that I knew that next one was going to kill me. And I said, I don't care. And I just did it anyway. I don't know why I'm not dead. Okay. No, I think I do know why I'm not dead, but we'll get to that. Anyway, so I went through all that. I went to the doctor. I showed him what I was doing to myself. And he said, you need to go to rehab. I said, no kidding. I need to go to rehab. I mean, I'm going to die. And so he cold turkeyed me off the Ativan. That almost killed me. So here's what you experience going cold turkey off benzodiazepines after you've been on them for 4.5 years like that. So my anxiety went to extremes that I can't describe. Extreme acute paranoia, rage, trembling, foaming at the mouth, ears screaming, the tinnitus so loud you can't hear yourself think, light, heat, sound. I had the sensation that ice water was being poured through my hair every few seconds, another glass of ice water. That went on for a couple of days. I didn't know it was the Ativan. I had stopped the Ativan, but you got to remember, I'm a mess now. I'm not thinking clearly anyway. I had no idea what was wrong with me. All I know is all of a sudden I'm out of my frickin' marbles here. And so I start Googling all these symptoms I have, right? And I come up with multiple sclerosis. Common misdiagnosis for people going through benzodiazepine withdrawals. The symptoms are very similar. My brother has MS. So now I'm putting all this together. I'm like, shit, family curse here. So I call my brother up. I'm like, hey, bro, I tell him all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. He's like, man, you got it bad. He's like, dude, you're going to die. You need to get to a neurologist like now and see if you can keep it in check. So I call my GP. And I can't get an appointment for 2 weeks. And I begged and begged and begged, and they just didn't have an appointment for me. I was pretty frustrated by that. But the next day, my brother calls me back and he says, hey, Mark, are you on a benzodiazepine? Like, what's a benzodiazepine? He's like, you know, benzos. I'm like, benzos? What? I don't know what this is. So he starts listing all these drugs off and he says, Ativan. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been on that for years. I just went off. He's like, man, you're in benzodiazepine withdrawal. That, you know, alphabet soup to me. I got back on the Google. I'm like, no kidding, I'm in benzodiazepine withdrawal. Turns out a lot of people are in benzodiazepine withdrawal. There are forums. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of people out there on these peer support forums trying to coach each other through getting off of this stuff. It's so excruciating. But anyway, I'm now convinced. So I call the doctor, the prescribing physician's office, and he's on vacation.
With his benzo money.
With his benzo money. Because they get
rolling in a benzo.
Yeah.
They get kickbacks for this.
I know.
They get kickbacks for this. So I'm going to his office every 90 days, telling him about my life falling apart. He doesn't know because he doesn't know. He doesn't know it's the Ativan. He thinks the Ativan's helping. He just doesn't know. He's a good guy. Just didn't know. A little arrogant, but he didn't know. So I'm pretty persuasive with his office people. And he calls me from Coconut Island or wherever the hell he is. I picture him with a floral print shirt and a, you know,
like a White Lotus
pineapple drink in his pants, you know.
Like White Lotus.
He's a White Lotus
yeah,
doctor.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm picturing this, and he's pissed. He's mad that I'm bothered on his vacation. And I'm talking like this, and blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm like foaming at the
mouth. You should have what about Bobbed him? Like, you can help me over the phone or I'm going to show up.
I was thinking about the same movie.
Yeah.
Dr. Marvin!
Dr. Leo Marvin. You want that? Otherwise, we need to talk.
Yeah, I've had to do a lot of baby stepping after all this. But yeah, so I call him up. I tell him what's going on. He goes, Mark, it's stress. He thinks I'm overwhelmed by stress. This is what he tries to, this is what he's telling himself. And he's trying to convince me it's stress. And I gave him what for. A couple hours later, he calls me back. He's like, okay, I think you might be in benzodiazepine withdrawal. I'm picturing him getting on Google. Do doctors have their own Google that's better than the regular Google? I used to see him get on Google in our office appointments.
He probably told his wife, and his wife's like, oh yeah, he's on benzo withdrawal.
Who knows? He didn't want to hear what I had to say, but he started to come around. He said, okay, I'm going to write you a new script. You need to start taking this right away. And I say, okay. Don't send it to Express Scripts. It's going to take 10 days to get to me. I said, send it to my local pharmacy here in Virginia Beach. He said, okay. So he writes me a script for Valium.
What's another benzo?
Another benzo. So I'm going, he sends it to the wrong pharmacy. He sends it to Express Scripts. So 10 days go by before the Valium shows up. Well, in those 10 days, two things happened. One is I went and looked up Valium, figured out it was another benzodiazepine. You know how I felt about that. Second thing that happened was I kind of peaked in that really acute withdrawal. I could see that I had gone over the top.
That's a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah, that's an absolute thing. You can
there's
feel
a peak. Yeah, you definitely feel the peak. And by the time that stuff showed up, I was definitely nose down, getting back down to the world. And in my linear mind, I just extrapolated and said, I can tough this out for a few months and I'm going to be fine. Well, my lack of education about benzodiazepines really hurt me there, because what ended up happening is I went and I sat in a dark room on a nest of beanbag chairs covered in blankets, blinds drawn, noise canceling headphones on because the sound of the air conditioning was excruciating, AC at 65, rocking back and forth, just trying to convince myself not to blow my brains out. This hour. And every hour I just went, I made one more hour. I did that for about 7 months. I slept no more than 30 to 60 minutes at a time during that period. I think by the end of 7 months, I was maybe getting 2 hours. I was out of my freaking mind. And there's no way I was going to take a benzodiazepine. But during that time, I did another thing. When I had enough clarity to read, I started teaching myself everything there is to know about benzodiazepines, which is why I was able to explain to you what the mechanism is there. I also came to understand that the way to get off the Ativan, which is a very short-acting benzodiazepine, was to replace it with a long-acting benzodiazepine like Valium. He was actually correct, but I don't think he read to the bottom of the page on Google, because Ativan is 10 times more potent than Valium. So I was on 2 milligrams a day of Ativan. He prescribed me 2 milligrams a day of Valium, which is a tenth of what I was on. I was still in a cold turkey withdrawal. Furthermore, I was probably on half the dose of Ativan. He never changed my dose of Ativan. As I went into tolerance withdrawal, if he had upped my dose, I would have been okay, meaning that it would have had the desired effect. But but I was setting myself up for even worse withdrawal. So in a way, it's good that I got off it. But what you needed to do was replace it with an equivalent dose of Valium, which at that time probably would have been 30 milligrams, I'm guessing. 30 milligrams of Valium will knock your animals down out there. I mean, that's a lot of Valium. But after 7 months, I finally found a doctor who knew what he was doing, a wonderful man. His name's Dr. Mike Bohan. He was chief of medicine at Portsmouth Naval Medical Center, and got out and had been helping people deprescribe Ativan for many years. And that man was an angel. He completely understood what I was going through. And he helped me get a better dose of Valium, enough to take the edge off. But getting off of that was 2.5 years of hell. So a lot of lasting neurological damage was done during that 7 months, because I just didn't have any breaks. I mean, my neurons just burned themselves up really, really badly. The Valium took the edge off of it, but I just laid on the couch trying not to kill myself. And I'll be honest, I tasted gun oil plenty of times. During that time. I mean, it's just so excruciating. You're a shell of your former self. You don't feel like a human. You're hollowed out. Your sense of time is shot. You feel like it's never going to end. You can't see the progress because it is very, very slow. you feel like you're trapped in a hell that you're never going to get out of. And so, if anyone listening's lost a loved one to suicide while they were going through benzodiazepine withdrawal, just understand that the math makes sense when you're in that position. I did a lot of math. Everything said I should just take myself out because, I just couldn't see that it was ever going to end. The reason I didn't, the thing that stopped me every single time is those two boys, my sons. I couldn't ruin their lives, I owed it to them. I had to power through for them. Sorry. I love my boys. They kept me alive. Viktor Frankl. Have you read Man's Search for Meaning? Heard that book? Viktor Frankl. It's a great book. I think everybody should read it. He was an Auschwitz survivor, and he wrote about a lot of stuff. But one of the things was he saw that the people survived the camps had one thing in common, is that they had a sense of purpose. Those boys gave me a sense of purpose. That was my purpose. I had to be alive to be their dad. And I'm so grateful for those boys.
How old were they at that time?
Man, 8, 9.
Golly, yeah, that
So
was.
you got out of it before they got old enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I had them I was on the every other weekend plan at that point. I had my kids at my house, and I don't know why they put up with me. My older son is naturally stoic. I'll tell you, if there's an old soul I know, it's that kid. He's ancient. He's just got a deep keel, and he's a little older than his brother, and he's just, he was born 25 years old, and I don't know if he understood what I was going through, but he somehow didn't hold it against me. My younger son, Jackson, one of the sweetest. You see this guy, 6'5", 210, runs like the wind. He's a freaking beast. These guys are great athletes. Big dude.
Nice.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
job, man.
Oh yeah, these guys are both playing lacrosse in college now, and all. So these guys are studs. But Jackson's a sweetheart. He's a very sensitive guy. He's a lot more like me than my older son is. And it's tough for a dad when he sees himself in one of his sons, because, oh my God, I don't want him to be like me. That's where I was at this point. And Jackson had some stuff he was working through. Every kid does, but I was not compassionate, empathetic, understanding. I was just trying to survive. And, I was pretty hard on Jackson. And, I'll resolve that later with
That's what it was with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for toughening out.
Of course. Well, they good.
Yeah, but I did a lot
Them
of
older
damage.
sons, man, they take some heavies.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. But my boy, they're both amazing young men. They're different, but they're incredible in their ways.
Yeah. Great moms.
Yeah. Their mom's a good woman.
Yeah.
I love her. I can't be married to her, but I love her.
I got out of that wreck just soon enough to keep both of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blessing.
Nice save.
All right.
It's pretty important. The family, it's the fundamental unit of civilization. When we start breaking up families, we're wrecking the world.
It's actually the best part of life when you got it.
It's the thing, bro.
Yeah.
God put us here to multiply and rejoice and create and love and suffer and all the glory of life. You got to have kids. If you don't have kids, you're missing out.
You are.
It's a beautiful thing. I feel sorry for people who can't. I was lucky, but I banged up my relationship with Jackson pretty good at that time. But we got through it, and I'd been coaching lacrosse. I just stepped away from that for a few years through the worst of it. I just wasn't functioning.
Hey, you can't. Yeah, you can't do nothing when you're on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
No, but
actually, when you're on it, it's not the problem. It's when you're coming off of that stuff, it becomes a train wreck.
Yeah. Until the addiction showed up.
Yeah.
To the addiction showed up. When the addiction showed up, I stepped away. I'm like, I have no business being around kids. So I backed away from that. I wasn't going to show up high or anything like that, but I just felt dirty, and I had to take a little break. And my my anger. It's just angry, Yeah, but anyway, later, as I recovered, like I said, I spent 2.5 years laying on the couch, not leaving the house much. Lost a lot of friends, didn't really interact with people, didn't show up for things. They didn't understand why. I was judged by a lot of people. They just didn't know, but made me more angry, more isolated. It was a tough time. But as my kids got along a little further playing lacrosse, like I grew up playing lacrosse. I love it. It's the best game ever.
That might be debatable.
You're in the South.
You're in Texas, man.
Texas is producing some good lacrosse teams.
Yeah,
we actually do have
Austin
some
and
students
Houston
coming online,
have
actually.
really,
Yeah,
and I guess
stepped up.
the big cities are coming along with it. But out here,
Yeah, we just didn't have it growing up.
Yeah,
It wasn't a thing.
I'm a Gator, man. I love football.
mm-hmm.
I love to watch football. I was terrible at football. I played Pee Wee and Pop Warner and all that stuff. I didn't play in high school. I sucked. But here's the thing about lacrosse. Every guy in the field is a skilled player. Everybody's touching the ball. You can't hide a weakling on a lacrosse field. And it's a flow game. It's up and down and up and down. It's not this, 3-second burst of effort and then you wait for the next snap. It's a flow game. As a matter of fact, you talk to the AD at the Air Force Academy, he'll tell you straight up, rugby and lacrosse, those are our warrior sports.
Mm-hmm.
Football's entertainment. But I love it too, bro. I'm telling you. I'll do anything to get to a Gator game.
Yeah.
And they're going to get Texas this year, by the way. And A&M.
They're doing good for sure, man.
That's funny.
Look at my Aggies step up.
But, as I recovered, here's, people don't know this. If I was your coach, if anyone's listening, if I was your coach, I want you to know that I love you guys. Just like those were my sons. So I had to show up for lacrosse practice 2 hours every afternoon. My entire day, when I got out of bed, my physical activity, my water and nutritional intake, I attempted to meditate, not very successfully back at that time, but I would psych myself up to be on for a couple hours so I could go to practice. And I would go to practice, and I'll tell you what, there were days I couldn't remember kids' names. My memory was shot. I could not remember anything. Years later, somebody gave me a 10-digit phone number that I was able to write down after I found a pen, and I almost started crying. I was so happy. That's how bad this stuff messes you up. But I would show up for a couple of hours and try to mentor some young men, through that game. And it gave me something I had to do every day, because I'll tell you what, if I didn't have that gun oil would have tasted better.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys saved my life. And
I was about to say, they become the mentors.
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah.
It's like showing up so they can coach you.
Oh yeah.
It reversed.
100%, bro.
Yeah, man.
That's the self-interested case for altruism. That's
right.
it right there.
That's it.
And believe
the
me,
power they have and the motivation they get. You can still see it, no matter how messed up you are.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it'll drag that goodness out of you. That's what kids are for, man. It's like the sugar-free candy of life.
I love those guys, man.
Yeah.
One time we went to a playoff game up in Richmond. My team did very well, by the way, despite me being all banged up. But we went to a playoff game up in Richmond just a couple of years ago. I only stopped coaching about 1.5 years ago, but went up to a playoff game, got our asses kicked by the team that ended up in the state championship game. And I was pretty sad about that. But I'm sitting in the front of the bus in the dark on the way back, and Country Roads comes on.
Great song.
And the whole team breaks out into song with gusto.
Yeah. With some damn enthusiasm.
With gusto. And that was the best moment I had coaching. Forget the big wins. The best moment of my 15-year coaching career was listening to them sing Country Roads in the back of the bus. I'm getting choked up again. They didn't know I was in the front seat crying. I recorded it. I've got the recording. I break it out every once in a while. It makes me happy. Makes me happy. But the point of all that is,
That's a good song when everyone lights that up.
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's good.
It's good, right?
Yeah, a lot of enthusiasm. Everybody knows the words.
Everybody knows the words. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just a happy song.
Yeah, it is.
It was a long ride home after getting your butts kicked, and you know what? They just loved playing the game, and that's how you're supposed to be. So, they had that right. But the point of all that is, when you're struggling like that, you got to find something to get your teeth into.
Yeah.
You got to have a reason to keep fighting.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, send out an anchor point. Like, there's got to be one. And that chaos in there, man. If your eye just catches one of them, man, sit out there and grab onto that sucker. And
whatever it is.
whatever it is.
You need something.
You know, we've been with Navy Federal Credit Union for a while now, and what I love most is how they treat you like a member and not just another account number. Whether you're in active duty, a veteran, or even just part of a military family, they really understand what matters the most. That's making banking very simple. From checking and savings to auto loans, and if you even need help buying a home, everything is designed to fit your life, no matter where service takes you. What really stands out to me, though, is the support they bring. Anytime I've had a question, their team has been very helpful, so quick, and just genuinely easy to talk to. That's pretty rare in banking from my experience. And since they are not for profit, they put their members first, with better rates, fewer fees, and real perks. You can handle everything online through their app, or you can stop at one of their 350 plus branches around the world. If you're looking for a financial partner that truly has your back, go check out Navy Federal at NavyFederal.org. Navy Federal is federally insured by the NCUA.
Yeah.
And I wasn't religious or really even spiritual. I was very materialist at that point in my life, which has changed since. But I couldn't turn to God. I didn't know how. I didn't have a prayer practice. I didn't read the Bible. I had none of that. I was lost. But those kids were awesome. So, yeah, good chapter there.
Do you want to get into how you found Ibogaine?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
It's important.
Yeah, I think so.
It's important. So I just spent a lot of time talking about the beatdown I took. And I like to characterize that as you hear guys talking about staring into the abyss. I just went ahead and flung myself into it pretty much. And, with as dangerous as the stuff I was involved with as difficult as those years of tapering back off that Valium were, the hand of God came down and put me back up and said, "Not yet, son." I truly believe that. He kept me alive for a reason. And I found that. I'm coming to understand what that is. So about the time I finished tapering off the Valium, I wasn't in good shape. There's a lot of trauma in there, a lot of neurological damage from various pathways. I was off the meds, but I was bad. My anxiety was horrible. My will to go on was pretty shaky. I wasn't a functional human at that point. I couldn't open my mail. For a couple of years, I didn't open my mail. My house went into foreclosure. I didn't care. I wasn't able to care. I was one day from a sheriff's sale when my buddies bailed me out. I had to sell a house to pay him back and all that. I was just bad. So a guy we both know, Wiz Buckley, he started I think back then it was the Top Gun Fighter Foundation, but you guys hooked up and went to the Mission Within, right?
That's where I met him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys met at the Mission Within. So he was down there with Marcus Capone and you.
Yep.
Who else was with you?
Gallery was there.
Oh, Gallery. Yeah, that's right.
He came wandering in. Those two, I didn't know them.
You didn't?
Which is a big deal, when you're stepping in there and especially with Gallery, freaking football player looked like a machine.
Yeah.
He's bigger than all of us.
He's a beast. Yeah.
And he had the same stuff I had going on, man. But best buddies now. I talk to him every week. But yeah, and then Wiz came in, and we kind of got the feel for each other. I figured he was a pilot, but that's why he carried himself. But
there's a way pilots carry themselves.
They walk and they talk. It's easy to pick up if you know what you're looking at.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm cross trained in it, so yeah, man. We were together.
Yeah, so Marcus Capone set that up, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you guys all went through there. And when he came back, he did a little kind of stream of consciousness, Wiz's initial debrief or whatever. I think it's still on YouTube. Just a little 5-minute thing. Just he's like, holy crap, Ibogaine blew my mind. And,
He had a hell of a ride.
He had a hell of a ride. He sure did. And my buddy Ponch Rivera, he's one of the best friends a man's ever had. He's a great guy. Ponch was in his Top Gun Options group. So Wiz comes in there and starts telling this story, and Ponch is like, man, my buddy Slider's a mess. He needs this. So he turns me on to Wiz's little stream of consciousness video. And I'll tell you what, I was not open generally to that long-haired hippie bullshit.
None of us are.
I wasn't,
Isn't it crazy? Like, I'm not either, but when you sit back and we hear your whole story and like, it's okay taking prescriptions from the doctor that get us hooked on everything.
The short-haired hippies.
Yeah. It's like, there's so much that sent your life down this horrible rabbit hole that is the opposite of the long hair hippie stuff, but it ended up getting you in such a dark hole. But then the long hair hippie stuff ended up getting you out.
Am I going to ruin the punchline if I tell you the hippies were right about a lot of stuff?
Yeah.
Took me a minute to get there, but I hear Wiz's story. And so I apply. I mean, I'm broke at this point. I mean, I almost lost my house. I mean, I was in bad shape. I applied to vets. And I think I might still be the only aviator that vets ever funded. I met Amber and Marcus at Microdose, just some months after that. And Amber came up to me and was like, oh my God, I saw your application. And she's like, give me a big hug. She's like, it was bad.
I heard that story.
Did you?
Yeah. For her to do that, she's like, oh, I know who you are. Yeah, that kind of thing. It must have been gnarly.
It's a true story.
Yeah.
It's a true story. So
they've helped so many people.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of good for the world for sure.
Mm-hmm.
No, but they graciously, got me a grant, and Ponch and my buddy Ponch, who was a reserve 06. I can say this now because he retired last year, but he was a reserve 06 working up at DARPA in defense innovation, human performance stuff.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and he's got his own story. That's his to tell, but. He and I went down there.
Super soldier programs, like Incredible Hulk stuff coming out of there. I got some buddies over there, man.
You speak the truth.
Yeah,
that's what they do.
I'm living proof of it.
He's close to that, man. He's one of the smartest guys I know, man. That guy's impressive.
Those guys are amazing.
Oh yeah. But he and I went down there, and another guy. You ever heard of Blown Up Guy? Oh man. So there's 3 of us. He's an Army guy that got hit with an IED, and then a suicide bomber T-boned him with a van full of stuff. He was we just met him down there, but look at blownupguy.com. He's got a
website.
He does. He's written all kinds of resilience training for the Army and stuff. He's really done
good dude.
Thing, but good dude. Yeah. So it's me and Ponch and, the Sarge there. And this was the second week that Trevor was in Tijuana.
Yeah.
So that house that you went through, or that we were in, a little while ago, down in Ambio, they had just rented that. They weren't even running that yet. So there was one group ahead of me. It was 3 people. And then I was in group number 2. And it was funny because, you've seen the program, how it is now. It has come very, very far. There's been a lot of thoughtful iteration and refinement. And, we're to the point now where that 5-day program, every bit of it has a purpose. And that's why we're getting such great results. But, when I got
helps
down
too.
there.
It changes everything.
Oh yeah.
When you have that program set the way it is, we keep refining it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty well optimized at this point, I think. But at that time, it was Trevor and Jonathan in the dorm room.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I don't mean to take anything away from it. I mean, they were trying to figure out how to, what the program needed to look like. And they did a great job. The fact that I'm sitting here talking about it is testament to that. It was a fantastic experience. You want me to spare you the trip reports, or just talk about them generally?
General.
Okay, generally. So, that first time, the Ibogaine, we talk about how the Ibogaine doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you need. We attribute this intelligence to it. I'm the not woo guy. I would say that it's a molecule that allows you to get out of your own way because you know what you need somewhere in there. And it just helps you get back to yourself. It opens the gateway between your conscious and your subconscious and helps you reconcile all the crap you've accumulated in there. That's the way I look at it. Other people may see it a different way, but your subconscious is much more responsible for the way you behave or the way you experience your life than your conscious mind is. All that stuff's programmed as a kid. That's a big part of my story with my son Jackson, which I'll tell you guys. But I got down there and I was fragile. Trevor will tell you, I was a hot mess. I was flaming hot coat hangers covered in hot chocolate. I was bad. And so, the Ibogaine gives you what you need. So I don't think I could have handled a difficult Ibogaine experience at that point. It just would have been more trauma for me, and I already had one medicine that was supposed to help me, to traumatize me more than all my combat stuff ever did. I just couldn't have handled that. And so I went in there, and when that Ibogaine came on, I'd say in the first half hour, it tore me open, spilled me out in front of myself, shined bright white light on all my stuff. And I'll tell you, Mark, I thought I was going to have to go in the pain cave and wrestle one demon at a time. And, you hear about that with some other psychedelics, but that is not what Ibogaine was for me. Ibogaine just showed me the truth. It took everything inside of me, laid it out, and shined light on it. And the veracity of it was so undeniable that it was relief. All these things in my subconscious, these beliefs I had about why I behave the way I do, all these things, why I struggled with, these events in my life, everything was shown to me. And it was a relief. I cannot find a word to tell you what a relief it was. And then I spent 14 hours in the driver's seat, navigating the universe. It's a crazy story. I've told it some other places, but just a beautiful experience that I was completely in control of.
Yeah, a lot of people are scared of it because of what other psychedelics can do to people. Like once it takes you, it keeps you. Mm-hmm. With Ibogaine, trying to explain it, it's like, hey, no, when you're laying there with you got those blinders on, you can lift them up and have a conversation like we're having right now, and then lay back down and go back into it.
So this is key. I've since, experimented with some ayahuasca and mushrooms and stuff like that. Very powerful modalities. Each one has its own characteristics, and, different medicines are appropriate for people at different places. But those other ones can tend to be ego dissolving, meaning that you have this sense, like ayahuasca or mushrooms, you can have this sense that you're dissolving into everything, which is pretty uncomfortable for a lot of people, especially if it's your first time. That could be traumatizing, actually, I think. Ibogaine, even though it is the big daddy, it is the nuclear weapon of psychedelics for sure. But
do you consider it a psychedelic?
No. And thank you for saying that, because the word came out of my mouth.
Yeah,
I wanted to fix it.
Psychoactive, but it ain't a psychedelic.
I don't consider it a psychedelic. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to fight for, is that we need a different word.
Okay. So yes, thank you for saying that. So Ibogaine is a medicine that works on cellular metabolism and neurotransmitters, and happens to have some psychedelic-like effects.
Okay.
It is, I think, entheogen is something I was really getting my teeth into for a while because of my second experience, which I'll talk about in a second. That one I really like that. So God manifesting. I think the more accurate term is oneirogen, which is it induces a waking dream state. I think that's more accurate, and it's more comfortable. Ibogaine journeys can be hard. A lot of that's because they're long, and then there's if you're a purger, that can be pretty tough. I know you've had some of that, but you can where you are. You took Ibogaine. You're on a bed at Ambio. The nurse or the doctor's over there, you can take your mask off and the world's still there.
So you're still in your conscious mind.
Yeah, you know
Yeah,
who you
absolutely.
are. But it gives you an opportunity to explore your own
You
consciousness.
can go to the bathroom, freaking whatever you want to do.
I mean, that's a little bit of ridiculous.
Not whatever you want to do, but I mean, yeah.
Well, it just gives you an opportunity to explore your consciousness without all your BS in the way of it. It takes the maze out of your mind. It just lets you wander around and just see it, you know. And so in that way, it's a lot easier. I think the length of it and certainly the recovery is, you know, grade A can be pretty rough for a lot of people. I bounce up happy as a clam and I want to eat.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. All right.
And then
There's some guys like that. But yeah, that's a good point. So it's more about cellular metabolism and neurotransmitter resets. And I had my gray day, the day after the Ibogaine on that first trip is when I got the insight about my son. And I want to tell you this story because it's simple to understand, but I think it's powerful. You know, I told you I was having a struggle with my younger son. Our relationship was not good. He was very angry with me, justifiably so. I wasn't listening. Turns out he was ready to tell me what was going on, but I was not approachable. That was my fault. But, you know, all I saw was a kid who was shooting himself in the foot in school. And I didn't understand why he's so smart, man. Those kids are smart. And I didn't understand why. So I cracked the whip. Why? Because my dad cracked the whip. That's what I learned from my dad. Well, why'd my dad crack the whip? I'll tell you why. This all came to me on my grade day. Not in the I mean, you're still kind of in the Ibogaine a little bit on your grade A, to be honest. You're kind of in it the whole day almost. But, you know, my father had a very traumatic childhood, a brutal story. He was the oldest of 4 kids, and he kind of had to raise his siblings, and there was just awful stuff that happened. And, you know, back in those days, I mean, life was hard. His dad worked 2 jobs, and, you know, his mom was gone, and it was just tough. And my dad grew up tough. You know, some of that's generational. You know, men from that era don't talk about their feelings. But the beating he took, you know, only annealed that more. And so what my dad learned from his childhood was for a man to survive, he's got to bust his ass and he's got to be tough. And so my father, his way of loving me and my brother was to be hard on us. But as little kids, we didn't receive that as love. What we heard was we're not good enough. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that until that day after the Ibogaine. It just hit me like, holy crap. I'm a southbound ant on the back of a northbound elephant. I didn't know I was on an elephant. That elephant was these lessons I learned incorrectly from my father, was that I'm not good enough. I didn't know. I mean, I was full of ego. You know, young fighter pilot, all this stuff. Yeah, a lot of ego in there. But what was driving that was that I thought I wasn't good enough. And it was very much in my subconscious. And I realized that I was doing the exact same thing to my own son that my dad did to me. And I did not want my boy on that elephant. I mean, look what happened. And when I realized, man, I want to go home so fast. Oh, God, I wanted to go home. But there was some more, you know, we had some more treatment and all that stuff, a couple of days. But when I got home, you know, I went over to Mom's house and I said, son, will you give me a minute? And he said, sure, Pop. And I said, for 60 seconds, I just want you to roll with me here. And I set my watch and I gave him a hug. And it wasn't, you know, good game, bro. It was, I love you so much, there are no words. That's what I was feeling. You know, coming out of the Ibogaine, it's easy to understand too. Your heart is so open. But I went and I hugged him, and he was stiff for a minute. And he softened up a little bit and he started hugging me back. And then I said, man, that was way more than a minute, wasn't it? He's like, yeah, Dad. I'd set 10 minutes on my watch, but you know, we hugged it out. And then I took him out in the living room and I gave him a much longer version than I just told you. But I explained to him what was going on with me. And I told him, I'm so sorry, son. I'm like, you can do no wrong. There's nothing you can do that would stop me from loving you and thinking you're an amazing, you know, gift. So you could be, you know, I hope you're not Jeffrey Dahmer, but I'd still love you because I'm your dad and God loves you too, you know. And it took a few months, you know, we've worked on stuff but we have a very good relationship now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because we ate some bark off a root from Africa.
Yeah. Isn't that
How crazy is that? It's crazy. But then, 6 months later, I went home. I was a lot better. I wasn't great. I was a lot better. Neurologically, I was better. I settled down. I wasn't stuck at 11. I was maybe at 9.7. But that's a big jump from where I was. And I don't know, I felt optimistic. I felt like my life was going to be okay. For the first time in years, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pull through this. I can do this. I'm going to survive. A few months later, Wiz and the Top Gun Fighter Foundation were shooting a movie down at the Mission Within. And he invited me to go down and be in that. And I'll be honest, I was on the fence about it because I saw how powerful this stuff in those months I became aware of the suicide epidemic, how many guys are taking themselves out every day. And, my heart was just aching about that stuff. And I was afraid I was taking up a spot that maybe could help someone who was worse than me. But we went down there and did that thing. Mission Within has a great program too, different format, but I had a very difficult navigating experience. It was not my IMAX tour of the universe like that first one. But this one's even better. As the experience started, I felt a very heavy darkness closing in on me. It was coming in from the sides and it was squeezing towards me, and I was filled with dread. I don't know what that darkness was, what it meant, what it represented. It felt like evil, and it felt like it wanted to chew me up. And I fought it. It was kind of doing like a G-strain maneuver, just trying to squeeze it out, squeeze the blackness back out. That's what happens, by the way, when the G lock is coming.
Hick maneuver.
Your peripheral vision starts collapsing, your color vision goes, and then the TV goes out, and you're asleep. So if you G-strain, you can push that back out. So it's weird. So I'm laying in this bed in Mexico, this darkness is coming in, I'm G-strain and trying to squeeze it back out, which was kind of working a little bit, but you can't keep that up for 12 hours or 14 hours. You just can't do it. Your sense of time is so messed up. I don't know how long it was, but I'm guessing about half an hour of that, and I was just gassed. I was out of energy. I couldn't fight anymore. I knew I was going to lose. I knew the darkness was going to come consume me. I knew it. I was terrified. And so I did something I'd never done before. In earnest, from the bottom of my heart. I mean, I really meant this. I said, God, if you are here, please help me. And for the asking, a beautiful eye appeared above me with these white points of light swirling all around it. And they came down in like a helix and enveloped my body. And I felt my body expand out beyond the limits of the room, and it pushed the darkness out. And that happened over and over and over again all night long. I couldn't at 20 times. I had no control over it. I was in a loop. Slider, you are going to freaking get this lesson. Sent with love. I have never for a moment doubted that we have a creator, that the nature of that creator is pure love, endless forgiveness, that we can turn to that creator to receive guidance and healing and knowledge. And it's always there. All you have to do is ask. You got to mean it. Always there. And I have never looked back from that, nor will I. It is the truth. I swear it all the way. And once you get your hands around that, life gets better real fast. Mm-hmm. And so, I felt bad. I thought I might be displacing someone who maybe was in more need than I was. But I don't know. It happened. And I'm here talking to you about it. And because of that, thank you. People need to hear it are going to hear it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and now you're helping others receive the medicine.
well, I am. So, yeah. So some years went by. God, it's almost 4 years ago now. Yeah, some years went by. I got involved with all kinds of stuff around this work. I was fortunate to get involved with General Marty Steele. I'm sure you guys know his name, Reason for Hope. He's a 3-star Marine general, retired. He was, in Trump's first term, he was picked to run VA. And Marty saw what was going on with the suicides. And he just said he knew about the medicine and how effective it was. And he said enough. And he turned that down, and he's, put his full energies into, helping deschedule this stuff and making it accessible to people who need it to save their lives. Because that's what it is. It's life-saving medicine. And out of that came the Veterans Mental Health Leadership Coalition, which, I'm a plank owner in that. Adam Marr's running that. He was one of the founders of Warrior Angels way back.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And his brother, Andrew, I met those guys. So getting involved in that.
They were the best.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, those guys are awesome.
Bro, when you're on that deployment, man, anybody's sending you gifts and there's something shows up for Christmas from them. What exactly
Warrior
what
Angels.
Yeah. What's like new socks?
Oh yeah.
That good stuff, man. They were the best.
The Warrior Angels that the Marr brothers started was like one of the first Ibogaine funders, wasn't it?
Well, they were doing, so they were working with a guy, Dr. Mark Gordon, who's an endocrinologist out on the West Coast. You check out Rogan. He's been on there, I think, 7 times. A lot of MMA guys go to him and stuff. He's a great guy. He figured out that these TBIs, operator syndrome, and now, coming from G-forces and fighters and stuff, he's finding out that there's a lot of endocrine disruptions. So he's going in and doing all the blood work. I'm just starting his program right now. He did a bunch of blood work, and he went through it with him, and he showed me all my markers that are off and stuff. And, he's trying to prove right now that if you can get guys' hormones straightened out before they go into these psychedelic treatments, they're actually more effective.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're on the beginning stage of this.
Oh, we're very early. And I don't know if that's the case. I mean, we're trying to determine that right now.
That's why the testing's so important. That's what we're trying to...
Oh, it's super important. And VETS is doing that. They have that trifecta study right now where they're doing MERT, magnetic resonance, they're doing hormone replacement, and they're doing Ibogaine 5-MeO.
Yeah.
And they're playing 3-card Monte trying to figure out what the correct order is. But they'll
nail that down.
Oh, they'll get it.
Sure.
Yeah, we're figuring this stuff out. So I was very lucky to get involved with them. And through that, I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to go visit, a lot of congressional offices. I've met your brother a few times and done some stuff with him.
He's my hero.
He says you're his hero.
He's lying. He's a politician. Don't believe a damn thing he says.
That I can agree with 100%. No, but we've got to do a lot of stuff. We went up to, one of the first things I did with VMHLC, we went up to Harrisburg. Man, I'm just coming out of the medicine. I'm brand new. I'm like a baby doe. And they put me in the rotunda in front of a whole bunch of TV cameras. And I, told a very awkward version of my story. What I lacked in talent, I made up for with enthusiasm, kind of like my dancing. But, that was well received. And that's where I met Adam and Andrew Marr and all those guys. And so, that organization has really grown. They've got over 50 veteran service organizations that participate in those meetings. So it's a great way to see what's going on in the world, to pool resources. When this MDMA thing with Lycos happened, I was on on stage with your brother there for that one in DC. They just activated the network and boom, we had 50 people show up in DC ready to tell stories and, work on all that. That whole thing was a shame. I hope that gets worked out, but yeah, so that's going on. I'm now on the advisory board for for the Behind Thin Lines, which was originally the Bone Frog Foundation. I'm going to bust your balls here a little bit. These guys realize that there's so many foundations for SEALs that almost every SEAL has his own foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome?
We wouldn't disagree with
And
that.
love everybody out there for doing that for us, man.
Yeah. Well, turns out, these first responders will go to work every day and they see decapitations and mutilated children, and stabbings and gunshots.
I'm all about that.
Oh, yeah.
Like our first responders, firefighters, and everybody, they definitely need to be. We should just absorb them.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's a couple. So behind thin lines, they're doing
That
great
should be
stuff.
automatic. Like I don't understand why that's not even a thing. I mean, just hands down. Anybody. I'm sorry, man. I'm getting worked up.
Well, the next step is, if you're serving the government, that bangs you up. The government should be sending you. We shouldn't have to get private donations for this.
Same with our city. Our cities are our states. You sign up, you're a firefighter and a first responder. They save my life all the time.
Yeah.
Like I die out here just regularly for fun. And they have to come get me.
Yeah. I mean, those guys are angels and they pay a terrible price. Behind Thin Lines has helped a lot of people. 343, the Casey Scudden 343 Fund, they're doing some great work. Casey was a firefighter who was killed in a tragic accident. And, Angela, his widow, has really gone full throttle on trying to help people get through this stuff. She ended up having the resources to do that. So, and there's other organizations popping up. I mean, all these people want to help, but, it's the government that needs to get out of the way. I mean, what's essentially happened here, and I said this in the Rotunda in Harrisburg, is our medical system has failed our warriors and our first responders so profoundly that we've been forced to build our own healthcare system outside of the healthcare system. I mean, that's the simplest explanation for what's happened here. We've got this big fight to validate it. The government's saying, oh, that plant that pops out of the ground, you can't have that. That's a Schedule 1. That's a Schedule 1 substance. No therapeutic value, high potential for abuse. Are you going to do Ibogaine on Saturday night?
Well, somebody said that to me the other day, and it's just like if your buddy calls you up and like, hey, come over, I got some of my mom's chemo medicine.
Yeah,
Let's run that.
Exactly.
You know what I'm talking about? Like and that's Ibogaine, you don't do that. And if you did go in there again, it makes you better.
Yeah. If you took it too much. So that's something that I wanted to ask you. And at this point, I probably should start to wrap up. But I do want to ask you, since you are sitting with so many people that do the medicine now, you have an extreme amount of experience in successes and failures of people that have gone through the medicine. When we talk about it to people, everybody says it sounds like it's too good to be true. And it is if you follow the rules with it. Mm-hmm. But I have seen cases of people where it doesn't work. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah. So, what you're talking about here is, and I don't even think we said it, but, MBO Life Sciences is blowing up right now.
Yeah.
And they needed hosts to shepherd people through these programs. So that's what I'm doing now. I just spent the last 8 months, in Tijuana doing that. I'm going home for the summer to see my kids, but I'll be back out there in the fall. This is a life's work at this point. It's very important to understand that this is not a magic pill. You don't go down there, do some Ibogaine, come home, and everything's fine. It blows the doors off, but you got to walk down the hallway. It will settle your nervous systems. TBIs, the TBI healing's profound. I mean, look at that Stanford study. That thing's crazy.
It's unbelievable, right?
Unbelievable.
Took it all the way down to nothing.
Yeah. Can we talk about that for a second? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we send 30 operators up to Stanford. They do functional MRIs, which, maps blood flow in various regions of the brain. When you have a TBI, there's reduced blood flow. That's how you see it on this imagery. So they do that with these guys, all those neurocognitive tests, a bunch of stuff, baseline them. They send them down to Ambio. They do Ibogaine, one Ibogaine treatment, no 5-MeO DMT. They go back to Stanford. They do the same imaging. And every one of them had dramatic improvement. Some of them, you couldn't even see a TBI. Every one of them did better on their cognitive
And even
tests.
if it did show, it wasn't enough to even to give them max TBI. I mean, they were just kind of like, this is normal life, beat up.
Oh, yeah. Every one of them got way better. Mm-hmm. So that's physical healing.
Right.
And that's the thing about the Ibogaine and neurological injuries. We see this with peripheral neurological injuries. We had an NHL guy came through a while ago, had a wound in his foot, a lot of pain, and ended his career. He went, did an Ibogaine treatment, walked out the door, not limping anymore. So all kinds of physical stuff happens, but for the psycho-spiritual stuff, which you can't fully separate those, but the trauma, you've got to do the work afterwards. It's about integration because you have all these big experiences when you're down there. You feel better. You're optimistic. You've got a lot of momentum when you come out of there. But the rest of the world didn't do Ibogaine. Mm-hmm. You go back out there, all the noise, all the BS you were dealing with before, it all wants to push you back where you were. Right. And so guys need to understand that the healing becomes durable when you go home and you change some habits. Because one thing about the Ibogaine is it's a pattern interrupter. We get stuck in these patterns. Depression is a pattern. Addiction is a pattern. There's all these patterns of thought, patterns of action. Ibogaine gives you a chance to build new, healthier patterns because we're creatures of habit. We know this is why we train in the military the way we do. You do it 1,000 times exactly right. That way, when you're losing your mind out in the field, you just do it because it's just memory, right? That's why that works, because we are creatures of habit. So people need to go home. I liken it to an Etch-a-Sketch. You've got all these patterns on your Etch-a-Sketch. You shake up your Etch-a-Sketch, right? And you go like this, and you can kind of still see what was there before, but you get a chance to make some new. That's what this does. You got to get on the Etch-a-Sketch and do some new stuff. And what does that look like? Things like, I can't believe I'm going to say this because old me would have punched me in the face. Breath work, meditation.
I say the same thing every time I say breath work. I'm like, I can't.
Breath work works.
It's huge.
Yeah. So I'm a neurological anxiety guy, right? I can't tell. Multiple times a day, I take a minute and I just, it's magic. And I feel better just after doing that. It's magic. You do that for a couple of minutes, you can really calm yourself down. So if you're fighting with anxiety, which is typical with TBIs, and trauma, psychological or spiritual trauma, you have to go home and build new habits. You have to be serious about health, self-care, your diet, a nice clean diet's important, exercise, spiritual practices, scriptures, prayer, whatever your belief system is, go do that. If it brings you closer to our Creator and gives you peace, then it's good. Just do it. Don't listen to other people. You just got to do what you got to do to take care of yourself. Because at the end of the day, we're all healing ourselves anyway. Medicine's not magic. It's a huge help, but you got to do it yourself. And so, 95% of the healing happens after. So we see people come back sometimes. They don't do their integration work or they don't take it seriously enough and they backslide. But they come back and they fix it. I certainly did some of that. I came out of it. I'd felt so bad for so long that, the contrast of how I felt after my first treatment, I was woo. And I went back out drinking and doing all that stupid.
Really?
I wasn't doing any drugs or anything. That was all long behind me at that point. But I kind of tried to have that old life again and it wasn't working for me. Was not working for me. That second one is the one that did it.
So what about guys or girls that go down there and don't see or feel anything?
Right. So people who don't, now I've heard of this a couple times. I've seen a few people with 5-MeO DMT who do not respond to it. It's a very small percentage, maybe 5%, something like that.
What about Ibogaine?
They just don't respond to it. I am not aware of anyone not responding to Ibogaine, but let me caveat that. It's fun to talk about the eye of God appeared and he sent angels to heal me. That's a lot of fun. It's great on podcasts. I actually have some regrets about going, I went on Max Afterburner podcast. We did these great trip reports. Those were awesome. It's a lot of fun, but the podcasts, like nobody goes in there and has a boring Ibogaine experience and comes out and talks about it. So that does happen. Our medical director, Ruby, who what an angel she is.
She's the best.
Dear sweet friend. She's big toe down there too.
Man.
Love me some Ruby. We tell the story about Ruby. She did her Ibogaine treatment and she said I was just a TV that was unplugged.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She got up in the morning, went outside, lit up a cigarette, and went, "Oh, I don't want this anymore." And she was done. So it looks different for different people. Isaac tells a story about Georgia. Patient number 248. Isaac is our Ibogaine provider. He's served.
This is the lady that didn't have anything all night, then went home, right?
Right.
And it hit her.
So he's served like 3,800 people. The guy's the master of Ibogaine, and
he's great.
Yeah, he's a riot. He's a good.
His speech at dinner time is something.
Yeah, we talk about, we do the Sweat Lodge, and then we do the Ibogaine, and we do the 5-MEO. Those are the 3 peaks of the week. Yeah. And I always go, man, I think Isaac's a peak
his
too.
is in there. His is definitely in there, man.
But he talks about Georgia. So this woman, she's on 50 30-milligram oxys a day. I mean, that's insane. 50 30-milligram oxys a day. So he goes in there and doses her. She's like, "I'm not feeling anything." He walks around a little bit, not feeling anything. Gives her a booster. Walks around, not feeling anything. Gives her a booster. Gets 4 boosters in her. He's basically up against, okay, I can't give you any more, or we're going to be, threatening your life. She gets bored. She's kind of pissed off because it's not working. She goes, "I just want to go downstairs." So she goes to bed. Wakes up later and comes out and says, "I just realized I haven't had any oxy for like 18 hours, and I can feel my body."
That's one of the coolest stories. Like, it just took it away from her,
my body,
in her sleep. Didn't make her go through a run or anything.
Right. So this is what I'll say. Sometimes people say it didn't work, but I would challenge any one of those people to go a month out and then look back, or ask the people around you if it worked. Because the vast majority of people have profound, very obvious healing in a very short amount of time. But for some people, it takes a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Now I remember we had one guy through, he was like a CIA interrogator, just the flattest affect I've ever seen. I saw no change in him. Don't know what that was. I mean, that's one time, and I've hosted a couple hundred people at this point. I don't know what happened to him. As a matter of fact, when we get off here, I'm going to go look him up and see how he's doing.
So I feel like if you don't want to heal, if you have no intention of really healing, and you're just going down there to see what it's like because everybody's talking about it, it's probably not going to work.
Yeah, you're missing it if you do that. So we talk about set and setting. Your mindset, the setting is the physical setting. So we provide a lot of safety there. And one nice thing about the 5-day program is, you get there, we go to a Temazcal, traditional Mexican sweat lodge, and the guys kind of bond. And believe it or not, beating drums in the sweat lodge causes a lot of emotional release and stuff. It kind of softens guys up, and they bond a little bit. And then, we go into the medicine and all that. Lost my train of thought.
If you're not.
Oh yeah, set and setting. Yeah. So, they become comfortable with each other. So they're in this group. And that is part of the setting, this brotherhood that you have around it. Because then,
because then the egos walk in when you first get there. Each guy's got his ego up. And then, the Native Americans have been doing those for hundreds and hundreds of years. The minute they put us in that sucker, man, we all come out, "Hey, what's up, bro?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, it's nice. You can't go through these experiences with a bunch of guys without them being bros for life. I mean, that happens. So that bonding provides a little bit of a safe container. And then the houses are very nice. It's a pretty luxurious experience from a, resort aspect, but then the medical care you get is,
the food.
Fantastic. So it's very important to feel safe physically, but the mindset that's the tough part, because you have to go in there humble. You have to go in there grateful. You have to go in there ready to let go of your ego and let the medicine work on you. If you can go in there and find a way to trust it and let it do its thing, it's going to do a lot for you. If you go in there and fight it, or if you go in there, unprepared, and you just, put the substance in your body, you're not going to get it.
And if you go back home and you've before medicine, you were already living in a very toxic lifestyle. like say you're in a very toxic relationship, like if you were still with that crazy girlfriend or whatever, and you go back to living with the same crazy spouse or whatever it is, that's a very unhealthy setting when you get home, you're probably going to eventually fall back.
Absolutely correct. So, and this is one of the questions, when we do our one-on-one counseling before the Ibogaine ceremony, this is one of the things we talk about. What are you going home to?
Yeah.
And that's a tough one. If it's your wife and family that are a problem, you got to go back to that. But you can go back to it with a different mindset, more empathetic, more patient mindset can, help resolve some of those problems. But sometimes people go back. I hate to say this, sometimes you married the wrong person.
Or if the person that you married might not be the wrong person, but maybe they need to do medicine too.
This happens a lot too.
To help erase some of those trauma patterns that y'all have built together. I did 5-MeO after Marcus did Ibogaine, and I would have never, you can ask anybody who's known me for a long time, every single one of them will tell you I would have never done 5-MeO. I would have never done any drug. And I did it, and it was amazing. I'll never do it again. It was a one and done for me.
People are one and done.
I don't ever want to do 5-MeO again, but I'll tell you after that time, which I didn't ever think I was creating a problem for Marcus, but what I realized is that I was always trying to micromanage and make sure that everything was taken care of, and everything was going to be perfect. And I'm a problem solver and a micromanager. So I realized I was causing him anxiety because I was being anxious. And the 5-MeO took all of that away. It just...
And it was lasting. It was durable.
Oh, yeah, man.
It's been 4 years.
Yeah, we have the best days of our life every day.
Now, yeah.
Me and this one.
Well, here's what I would say about the 5-MeO. The Ibogaine is very effective.
Yeah.
You can treat people with just Ibogaine. The 5-MeO complements it perfectly, though. And, the Ibogaine is about cellular metabolism and receptor resets. The 5-MeO is about experience. Mm-hmm. For anyone listening who doesn't know, 5-MeO is an ego dissolver. You melt into everything. The way we talk about it at Ambio is imagine yourself as a drop of water who falls in the ocean, and you get to experience being the ocean for a little while, but then you come back out, you're still the drop of water, but you've also been the ocean. And that experience stays with you. And as you well know, it is so powerful. The peace you feel, the oneness with everything, it's the opposite of the Ibogaine. The Ibogaine's inward, the 5 is outward. You become one with everything, and it's very hard to walk away from that, not understanding that you are one with everything. Mm-hmm. That this is all.
It shows you.
This is God. That God is everything, and you can't deny it after that experience, can you? It's so powerful. Mm-hmm. And I look at that as a well of peace that you can go back to, because, I remind guys when they're leaving there, you didn't go anywhere. You were just laying here. Mm-hmm. That's all inside of you. And once you've accessed it, I think it's easier for you in a time of struggle to go back to that feeling and just remember it for a minute.
Yeah.
And know that everything's okay, because everything is okay. It's always been okay.
Yeah.
We make our own BS to suffer with,
And I challenge people that are going to go do Ibogaine and they have a very toxic lifestyle at home, whoever's their number one, like if it's a spouse, if it's a parent, a sister or a brother or whatever, have them do a medicine too. And that way you're both on the same page and you can work together and you figure out life together. Because if it's just you and you're going back to that toxic life, you're going to end up crumbling again.
Absolutely true. So
unless you remove yourself from that toxic life.
So here's what typically happens. A husband comes through, has a great experience, does a lot of work, goes home, he's better. And the wife is like, I want what he had.
Mm-hmm.
And so they come down.
Mm-hmm.
So the wife comes down 6 months later. It happens all the time. 6 months later, wife comes down. Sometimes couples even come through, although I don't think that's the best idea. But
no.
And their relationship, I'm better. Together, it just multiplies.
Yeah.
And the relationship, it deepens your love.
Because I have seen where husbands will come back and the wives are like, we're still an asshole. Like, I still see you as the asshole you were before. Like, they can't get over it. And so it ends up imploding.
Yeah, it takes a long time. So, I through my worst days, I pissed off a lot of my friends. I lost a lot of friends, to be honest. So, people walked away from me. My core bros, my ride or die bros, never gave up on me. But yeah, there's a lot of criticism and all that stuff. And, as I've got better, I think some of them still do, think I'm that asshole from before.
Yeah.
I've just learned to not be too attached to what other people think.
Yeah.
I'm a different guy now.
Yeah.
And my heart is with this work. I think the world is crazy right now. It's nuts. And the way to heal that is to produce more people who understand our interconnectedness, that understand you're another me and I'm another you. And, you don't want suicidal compassion. We see people that do that, but I think it's through growing empathy that we can resolve all this stuff. And frankly, I'd like to stop these stupid wars. We don't need to talk about Afghanistan again. Look what's going on in Ukraine. What are these wars over? What are we fighting over? I don't want to send my sons off to die for some stupid crap. If we're under attack, yeah.
Yeah.
Or, if our interests are under attack, sure. But you need to be careful about where that is.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a place for our military, obviously. But sometimes it's the leaders and it's their egos that get us into messes that aren't necessary.
Yeah. So, how do we do this?
Well, that's a
Why don't we
that's
just
a rabbit hole you don't even want to get into right now.
Bring back dueling. Yeah.
Yeah. We can end it. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and for sharing your story. It was very touching. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are listening that are addicted or not even addicted, but dependent on medicines that they can't get off of and they're struggling with, that your story will help them.
Well, I hope so. A lot of us hide in shame. We go through these struggles with addiction in particular, and we hide because we're proud. And, I did that for a long time. And I'll tell you, I needed all the stuff I went through to mean something. And so one day I just said, I got tired of hiding. I got tired of feeling shame and guilt and all that stuff. And I just pulled my pants down and told my story. And the first time I did that, I cannot tell you how much relief there was. And what has happened continuously since then and continues to happen is people hear these stories, they go, holy crap, I'm not alone. Mm-hmm. And then they reach out to us. It happens to me all the time. Guys reaching out to me all the time. And so do other people who've told their story. All of us do. I'm sure you do too, right? People come to you all the time. It's okay to be broken. We're human. It's also okay to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And, if you find yourself judging someone who's an addict, I will tell you this. They didn't wake up one day and say, I want to be an addict. What happened was they were in pain and they didn't know what to do about it. And for whatever reason, some line was crossed where something unhealthy made them feel better temporarily. And then they're off to the races. And it's awful when you're there. Yeah. It's awful. So this is what I mean about empathy. We're all broken. People act like they aren't. They are. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got this stuff. Maybe you're not an addict, but everyone's got this pain. We should be honest about it. We keep this facade up, particularly on social media or in the movies and stuff like that. Everyone acts like they have this perfect life and everything. They get on Facebook. They're full of crap. Everybody's struggling. Mm-hmm. So we should talk about it and help each other out.
Yeah.
Great job, brother. God bless you, man.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is the Team Never Quit podcast. So buckle up, Buttercup.